You and I are about to watch the wildest comeback ever. I woke up freezing in a ruined mud hut. It was 1960 again, the hardest winter imaginable. My little sister, Sweatsu, shivered right next to me on the cold bricks. She was 9, but looked so frail. She held little 4-year-old Yaya, who was barely breathing, her tiny face looking as pale as pure snow. All these dramatic memories rushed back to me. Our parents passed away 2 years prior. We had zero food left. In my past life, little Yaya didn't survive the terrible hunger right here on this exact bed. Sweatsu cried so much she lost her sight and faded away before spring arrived. I lived my whole past life buried in regret, but now I was back. Fate or some mysterious power just gave me an epic second chance. I bit my lip until it hurt. This time, nobody messes with my sisters. Then, pure magic happened. A sudden rush hit my mind, and suddenly, I'd see right through everything. Through the heavy blanket, through the walls, and through the empty rice jar. I unlocked epic X-ray vision. I didn't waste time being amazed, because we desperately needed food. My incredible eyes quickly spotted it. Half a meter deep inside a tiny mouse hole, there was a hidden stash of peanuts saved up for the freezing winter. I leaped off the bed barefoot and clawed the wall with my hands. My nails chipped and scraped raw, but I felt absolutely no pain. I dug fiercely until I finally pulled out a handful of dirty, shriveled peanuts. Maybe 3 or 4 ounces. Watch closely. This is where it gets real. To me, these peanuts were gold. True survival means fighting back. If you want to survive, you must be tougher than the wild. I cheerfully told Sweatsu to shell them. She stared at the peanuts like precious treasure, her hands trembling as she cracked them open. I mashed a few up and tried feeding Yaya, but her little jaw was completely clamped shut. She desperately needed warm water, but we lacked firewood. I scooped snow from the window into a bowl, trying to melt it with my hands. Totally useless and freezing. But then another mysterious feeling sparked in my mind. An empty dimensional room was literally floating inside my head. I tried putting the bowl inside. It magically vanished from my hands and teleported right into that mysterious space. I quickly pulled it back out, and the snow had transformed into warm water. 0 questions asked. I gently fed the warm water and peanut paste to Yaya drop by drop. A few dramatic minutes later, her eyes fluttered. Hungry, she whispered, sounding so incredibly fragile. Sweatsu burst into emotional tears. I quickly divided the remaining peanuts. The big pile for Sweatsu, the tiny one for me. She tried arguing, but my fierce stare made her happily give in and start eating. Those peanuts wouldn't completely fill us up, but they were a brilliant spark, enough to sustain us. Yaya woke up slightly, still frail, but a beautiful light returned to her eyes. She grabbed my finger playfully, trying to taste the yummy peanut flavor right off it. My heart swelled with such intense emotion. I stood up strong, looking out the cracked door. Pure white snow was everywhere, completely burying the outside world. The village was completely quiet. Not a single dog barking anywhere. People had already consumed them, unfortunately. These snacks only bought us one more day. Tomorrow, once the snow clears, I'm heading into the mountains. There are wolves, wild boars, all sorts of creatures there. Before, I was terrified, but having lost everything once, I am now fearless and ready for anything. I proudly watched my sisters huddled under the torn blanket. If I ever let them go hungry again in this new life, I simply wouldn't deserve my name. Let's pause for a second. Sweatsu's voice suddenly cut through. Brother, someone is approaching us fast. Then, a massive bang. Someone aggressively kicked our door. Wang Yi, you gone yet? Open up. It was my villainous uncle Wang Chong, Arthur's very own brother. After mom and dad passed away, this guy stole everything valuable from our home. Furniture, supplies, even our final bag of cornmeal. Now, he showed up thinking the winter had completely finished us off, eagerly hoping to claim our house for himself. Family, in times like these, that word means absolutely zero. I clenched my fists. My fierce stare alone could have destroyed him. The door almost broke from his kicking. I told Sweatsu to stay super quiet, confidently grabbing a fire poker nearby. Hard guju wood, one end scorched black like iron. I bravely yanked the door open. My evil Uncle Wang Chong stumbled in with the freezing wind. He wore a fancy, thick black cotton coat, way better than our stuff. His face looked ridiculously mean. He casually glanced at the bed, saw little Yaya was miraculously still kicking, and didn't even bother hiding his incredibly selfish master plan. "It is way too cold for you kids here," he smirked. "Go sleep out back instead. I need this house for firewood." Firewood? Yeah, right. He was stealing our home. In this freezing weather, losing the house meant the absolute end. Even if we had food, I stood firmly in the doorway, blocking his path, the poker hanging casually. I didn't say a single word. He reached out to shove me away. "Move it," but his hand never connected. I raised my head, staring at his neck. My awesome X-ray vision kicked right back in. I could see straight through him. Muscle, bone, and that major artery pulsing wildly on his neck with every heartbeat. One epic swing of this poker, and he would be sent absolutely flying. You and I just know what happens next. My grip tightened, lifting the wood slightly. His cocky eyes completely changed. Time for epic payback. Stick with me here. We are about to watch our main character stop acting like a terrified little mouse. He gave off wild lone wolf energy. His uncle's hand froze completely midair. He actually stepped backwards. "Uncle," I said, sounding colder than the freezing wind outside. "Take one more step. Just see what happens." Pure, calm confidence. Instead of begging, that mysterious calm absolutely shook him. He stumbled back, nearly tripping right over the doorstep. He called me crazy, but his voice totally lost its fierce bite. Then he turned and sprinted away faster than a rabbit. He didn't even drop a parting threat. "Being too soft lets people walk over you. If you want to stop the bullying, you must stand incredibly strong." I dusted off my hands and slammed that wooden door completely shut. But of course, he came back. Once the shock faded, his silly pride kicked right back in. A grown adult terrified by a quiet 19-year-old kid. He could not accept that embarrassment. He charged our door like an angry bull. The old wood broke. One side popped right off its hinge and hung crooked. Freezing snow poured inside. Sui screamed loudly and pressed herself and Yaya into the tight corner. This time, he did not even hesitate. He rolled up his sleeves and marched straight toward the bed, targeting my sisters. "You ungrateful brat. I'm your uncle looking out for you. Now get to the shed before this collapsing roof harms someone." I didn't swing the iron poker. He was way too close to the girls. I might accidentally hit them. Instead, my eyes locked on a brick propping up the table leg. With a single thought, I pulled it into my pocket. Dimension. Gone. "Now watch closely." I pushed it right back out where his foot was landing. Absolutely zero warning. That solid brick just materialized out of thin air. His entire body weight crashed down on the sharp edge. His ankle twisted horribly, sending him lurching forward with absolutely nothing to grab onto. He fell face first into the wooden table. That loud crack was intense. He grabbed his mouth and screamed like a wild pig. Spit went absolutely everywhere. When he finally pulled his hands away, two of his front teeth were completely snapped. Lying in the muddy dirt floor, Suitor stood completely frozen, watching this whole crazy scene unfold. An empty floor 1 second, then a mysterious brick appearing out of nowhere. She looked like she saw a ghost. I stood over him, staring down, cold as pure ice. "Uncle," I said, "the floor is quite uneven. Watch your step." He tried cursing at me with a messy hand, but moving his mouth brought completely unbearable, dizzying levels of pain. He frantically scrambled to his feet, ignoring his broken teeth entirely, and sprinted straight out the door while clutching his face. Messy drops slipped through his fingers down the path. This time, the cowardly guy never even looked back. I propped the door closed with the log and turned toward Sweatsu. Her shocked face was white as chalk. "Brother, that strange brick?" "It is nothing," I replied, letting the tough expression fade from my face. I walked over and gently touched Ya's forehead. That bad man got exactly what he deserved. Heaven punished him. I couldn't explain the brick. Sometimes magical secrets must stay completely hidden, even from the people closest to your heart. Outside, the winter sky grew dark. My empty stomach loudly growled again. Those peanuts were already long gone. But watching my awful uncle run away with a smashed-up mouth did not scare me at all. I know what you're thinking. A big shift just happened. You simply cannot spend your whole life playing defense. Since he targeted my house first, I would go after everything he owned. In a harsh world that crushes people, being overly soft gets you destroyed. The smartest way to survive is hitting back twice as hard. Late that chilly night, the falling snow finally stopped. The village was completely silent, incredibly still. I lay on the bed, just listening to my sweet sister's breathing. Sutzer kept nervously twitching in her sleep, clearly still shaken from that whole uncle drama. Once I felt absolutely sure they were deep asleep, I silently got up. I tightly wrapped my worn coat and securely tied a rough rope around my waist to keep the freezing wind far away. I found the heavy mountain knife sitting in the dark. The blade felt ice cold, sparking a bold feeling inside me. I left it behind, though. Tonight was absolutely not about doing harm. Tonight meant taking back what rightfully belonged to me. I slipped outside like a sneaky cat, moving through shadows along the walls. Nobody was awake. The whole village slept extremely early to save lamp oil. My uncle's house sat right next door, with just a short mud wall between us. I climbed over without making a sound. Being a skinny teen definitely had unique advantages. I was super quick. Crouching against his back wall, I pressed my hand to the frozen mud and activated my X-ray vision. A headache swelled up, but I pushed through it. The solid wall suddenly turned transparent. Inside, everything glowed faintly green, exactly like cool night vision goggles. Uncle Chonge was lying there with his mouth swollen up like a huge sausage, groaning miserably over his broken teeth. His wife snored like a heavy log right beside him. I didn't care about them. I scanned the room like a searchlight. Closet, just old clothes. Stove empty. Where did this greedy jerk actually hide his food? Then I finally spotted it, tucked right under the massive wooden chest by the bed. Hidden beneath a green brick, there was a secret hollowed-out space. Inside sat a small cloth bag stuffed completely full. Judging from the shape of the tiny pieces, it was fine grain millet. Trust me, you're going to love this payback. I remembered exactly where it came from, the relief millet given to us when my parents passed away. Stick with me. That uncle took our food, claiming he'd keep it safe. He never gave back a single grain. That millet was always ours anyway. I pressed my hand flat against the cold wall, getting as close to the hiding spot as physically possible. At about 1 meter away, my spatial power hit its limit. Holding my breath, I reached out with my mind, piercing through the wall and the wooden chest, locking onto that bag. Grab it. My inner spatial dimension trembled slightly. The bag vanished from the bricks and popped into my space. A sharp headache instantly hit me. Pulling physical objects through walls was seriously draining. I almost collapsed on the spot. Checking my space, I saw the blue cloth bag sitting perfectly right in the corner. Mission accomplished. Inside, Uncle Shangwei stirred and mumbled in his sleep. I froze against the wall, completely holding my breath. After a long, tense second, he went back to snoring loudly. I just smiled, totally unfazed. Before leaving, I scraped up some frozen animal mess from the ground. Using my power, I dropped it right into the hole where the millet used to be. Fair is fair, right? Tomorrow, when he finds his precious stash turned into literal garbage, I'd pay serious money to see his face. I sneaked back home the exact same way and crawled straight into bed. My sister Sui rolled over in her sleep, gently grabbing my coat. I mentally checked the millet in my space. About 5 or 6 pounds, totally enough to last a while. First thing tomorrow, I was making porridge for my sisters. I woke before dawn, the eastern sky slowly turning pale. Honestly, it was the best sleep I've had since returning to this life. Having food secured really settles your nerves. I got up quietly, fixed the broken door, and carefully stuffed every crack with old rags. Now pay attention. In times like these, cooking smells easily bring hungry human wolves to your front door. I pulled the stolen millet from my dimension. Beautiful golden grains, perfectly plump and round. I grabbed just 2 big handfuls and stored the rest away. with absolutely no water inside the house. I snapped off some clean roof icicles and dropped them right into our little cracked clay pot. Starting a fire was a struggle. The wood was totally damp, and I barely had any matches left. Using the very last bit of dry grass, I sparked a flame and carefully placed the pot over it. The ice melted, the water boiled, and I tossed in the washed millet. Soon, a smell I hadn't experienced in forever filled the room. The authentic scent of sweet, rich, and wonderfully warm grain. I stirred the pot happily, watching those little grains bloom and thicken into perfect porridge. Every bubbling pop sounded like the absolute best music in the world. Soon after, little Yaya woke up first. Her tiny nose twitched, her eyes snapped wide open, and she scrambled off the bed barefoot, rushing to the stove. It smells absolutely amazing. Brother, what are you cooking? Sui woke up too, sitting wrapped in her blanket, staring at me like she was in a dream. Hold it, put your clothes on first. I ordered them, acting strict, but smiling. No warm clothes, no food. I have honestly never seen two kids get dressed so insanely fast. They sat right on the bed's edge, four massive eyes totally locked onto that clay pot, not even blinking once. I could hear them gulping. I placed the pot on the little table. Three of us around one pot. Let's eat. Yaya shoved her little face right to the pot, trying to lick it. She burned her tongue and jumped back, but she was still grinning brightly from ear to ear. Sui carefully blew on a spoonful of porridge over and over before finally putting it in her mouth. You guys know this feeling, right? That perfectly cooked, warm, smooth comfort food. The very second it hit her tongue, happy tears rolled down her cheeks and splashed right into the pot. Why are you crying? I laughed, picking up the pot and taking a massive gulp. Amazing warmth rushed through my stomach, making me feel truly alive again. Brother, it's so good. Sui wiped her tears away, half crying and half happily laughing. Way better than New Year. Can we ever eat this again? Yes, I promised, wiping the messy porridge from Yaya's chin. And not just porridge. Someday, we'll have real meat. New clothes, too. Yaya looked up at me, sweet rice paste smeared over her mouth. Her eyes curved into happy little moons. Brother is the best. Brother is the best. Brother is the absolute best. Seeing their glowing, happy faces, the heavy burden in my heart finally felt a little lighter. The pot emptied fast. Yaya hugged it tight, licking the very bottom completely clean with her tongue. Not one single drop of food was wasted. Full bellies, warm bodies, and healthy color finally returning to their cheeks. I stood up and peeked through the window crack. The sun was finally out, blazing off the snow, when almost entirely blinding. The storm was over. 5 or 6 pounds of millet could last maybe half a month if I stretched it. But that honestly wasn't enough. To truly survive in this crazy world and live properly, I needed way more than just millet. I needed meat. I needed actual money. My eyes drifted toward the mountains behind our village. The long, rolling ridges of the Chai Range. Live by the mountain, eat from the mountain. If you have the guts, the wild will feed you. So, I'm heading out. Lock the door tight. I grabbed the hatchet from the corner and my bird hunting slingshot. A sharp hatchet for close range. Slingshot for distance. The perfect combination. I tucked both in my belt. If anyone knocks, do not open. If uncle comes back, scream. Brother, where are you going? Sui asked, worried. Trust me, you guys will love what happens next. Stick with me here. I tightened my belt, eyes turning sharp. Time to hit the mountains so we can survive. I had just secured my hatchet when intense screaming erupted next door. My grain. It sounded much worse than a wildly squealing pig. Uncle Shangwei had finally found his surprise. Then came crashing pots and bowls violently hitting the floor. His wife started shrieking too. Who took our life savings? You absolute thief. I simply stood by my door and smiled just a little. But I did not go outside. No point showing my face. Better to just sit back and watch. Brother, what happened? Sweatsui's face went completely white, chopsticks slipping from her fingers. Did someone pass away over there? Nobody passed away, but he probably wishes he did. I waved her over. Come here, let me braid it. Go outside right now would only draw unwanted suspicion. Better to stay indoors and let that drama completely burn. Sui walked over, and I took her thin, yellowish hair in my rough hands. I combed it gently, strand by strand, as things got louder. Early, you absolute scoundrel. Get out here. Uncle Shangwei had burst from his yard like a wild animal. He held up that blue cloth bag, the exact one I left that frozen dog inside. His eyes were intensely red, his hair completely messy. His broken teeth kept dripping every time he yelled out. He looked like an absolute demon, fresh from devouring someone. He had figured out a suspect early, the village thief. Apparently, Early had been sneaking around Uncle's back wall last night attempting to snatch chickens. He took absolutely nothing, but his presence was enough for Uncle Chongwei's wild anger. The entire village came out to watch. Entertainment was super rare back then. Any commotion immediately brought everyone out running. Now pay attention, here's where it gets crazy. Early was squatting, picking off lice, right when Uncle aggressively charged him. Pure guilt flashed across his face, and he tried running away. That was all the proof Uncle needed to tackle him hard into the snow. Two grown men rolling around in the snow, punching, scratching, grappling. Give me back my grain. Uncle was on top, hands gripping Early's throat, broken teeth, aggressively grinding. But Early wasn't weak. He fiercely clawed Uncle's face, ripping 2 strips of skin right off. The blue bag popped open in the snow, and frozen dog chunks tumbled out. The villagers stared. What is that? That doesn't look like grain. Meanwhile, I sat perfectly steady, braiding Sui's hair. Left strand over, nice and even. Brother, that truly sounds like an intense fight. Sui whispered, scrunching her little shoulders. Just wild dogs biting dogs. Only fur and teeth. I finished the braid, looking up. That little plait gave her pale, cute face some life. Sister looks so pretty. Yaya happily clapped from bed. By then, the village militia finally ripped the 2 men apart. Early lay flat on the ground, completely bruised up. Uncle Shangwei looked much worse. Scratches, weeping red all over his face. Sitting there by the frozen chunks, crying his absolute eyes out. My grain turned into that. That is what you get. Early forcefully spat red down. You've been totally greedy your entire life. Even heaven couldn't take it, turning your grain into this as punishment. The villagers gossiped among themselves. Some blamed mysterious fox spirits, while others claimed heaven was punishing Uncle's incredibly stingy ways. You and I both know the real truth. Why would they ever suspect a starving, quiet, 19-year-old orphan kid? I had been inside with my sisters the entire time, door tightly shut, never stepped out. But this wasn't quite over. Uncle lost his grain. This winter just became brutal for him. He would definitely come seeking trouble again. Plus, Early would hold a serious grudge from that beating. Let them destroy each other. I adjusted the hatchet on my belt, ensuring I could draw it lightning fast. So, carefully bolt the door. I made my voice super serious. Remember my exact words? No matter who comes, even God. If it is not me, do not open it. If someone tries breaking in, toss boiling hot water. I will remember, brother. Sui nodded hard, touching her brand new plate. There was a fierce look in her eyes now. A little bit of pure steel. I boldly pushed open the door. Freezing wind hit me. I ignored Uncle Shangwei, who was still pathetically wailing in the snow. I pulled my hat down, stepped into the deep drifts, and marched toward the snowy mountains behind town. I was not coming back without meat. Once I left the village, the chaotic noise totally vanished. The world was nothing but endless, blinding white. I waded through heavy snow up to my knees, making every step a fight. 3 intense days of snow had completely sealed the mountain. Nobody wanted to come out. Good. 0 people meant absolutely 0 competition. The small woods behind the village were usually picked completely clean by people gathering firewood. You could not even find one rabbit hare. But after 3 snowy days, desperate, starving animals would hit the edges seeking food. I trekked a mile in. Bare poplar and locust trees stood everywhere, branches completely covered in ice. That's where we leave it. The cold crept in my porridge. Warmth gone. Sweating, panting, completely weak. Trust me, you'll want to see how he survives this madness. Let's jump into a wild survival story. He had to be quick. Back home? No food, no oil, freezing cold. He closed his eyes, then bam, X-ray vision activated. The snow turned into clear glass, letting him see every single hidden layer. Fresh powder, hard ice, then frozen dirt. His sight swept out 50 meters in all directions, scanning the frozen ground just like radar. Absolutely nothing but rocks. The hungry villagers had stripped this entire area completely bare. He turned it off to save energy. Using it too much caused massive headaches. Pushing deeper, the snow got much thicker. Then he stopped. Right by the bushes, he spotted fresh little paw prints in the snow, spaced pretty far apart. A rabbit passed by less than 30 minutes ago. The tracks vanished near a fallen tree. He smiled, flipping his vision back on. Staring through the wood, a tiny hidden tunnel popped up. A sneaky escape route running right under the snow. He tracked it. 5 meters, 10 meters, roughly 20 meters away, hidden beneath a thorny bush, sat a super cozy little nest filled with grass. 3 chubby gray rabbits were all huddled up together, trying to stay warm. The biggest one was round as a ball. His throat totally tightened up. Real, actual food. Imagine that roasted up. His mouth was literally watering. But how could he catch them? All he had was a simple hatchet. Rabbits get spooked easily. One tiny noise and they'd bolt through those tunnels faster than anyone could ever blink. Now, pay close attention here. Digging or trapping was way too risky. He could not force this. He had to be incredibly smart. He grabbed 2 heavy stones from the snow. Back in the day, he was the absolute best slingshot kid in the village. His hands still remembered the feeling. These stones were his bullets. He circled downwind around the bush so they would not catch his scent. He crept closer. 20 meters, 15, 10. That was the limit. Before they'd hear his footsteps in the snow. Dropping to one knee, he took a deep breath of freezing air. His body tensed up like a fully drawn bow. Vision back on. No scanning this time. He locked right onto that biggest, fattest rabbit. Through the branches, he saw every breath, every single muscle twitch. He even spotted the weakest point on its head with absolute perfect clarity. Hit that spot. Game over. He slowly raised his right arm, muscles completely tight and his veins totally popping. He calculated the exact arc, tracking how the rock would weave through branches to perfectly hit the target. The second it sensed danger, everything went totally silent. The wind stopped. All he saw was the target, the exact strike zone, glowing bright red in his focused mind. Bam! His arm whipped forward. The stone flew in a wicked curve, threading past the thickest branches of that thorny bush. You saw that, right? The crazy power of his vision. Let him correct his aim in real time. The big rabbit noticed and raised its head. Way too late. A heavy thud echoed as the stone made a direct, perfectly solid impact. The sound was super sharp in the silent snow. Direct hit. The target was instantly knocked out, completely cold on the frosty ground. Bullseye. But he didn't stop. His left hand fired the second stone right at the mother rabbit. Bolting for the tunnel. 2 throws back to back. His aim was off by a hair, and the stone solidly struck her back leg instead. She tumbled hard through the freezing snow. But her wild survival instinct drove her to desperately drag herself toward the hidden escape tunnel. No way. He was letting dinner escape. He exploded forward like a cheetah, hatchet in hand. A few quick steps, and he reached her. She was halfway inside. One swing, a flash of cold steel, and the chase was finally over. The prize was secured in the cold air. Meanwhile, the smallest rabbit had already completely vanished down a sneaky side tunnel. He let it go. 2 out of 3 was amazing. He stood there, catching his breath, holding his hard-earned catches. It was a total success. To him, the promise of a hot meal seemed absolutely wonderful right about now. He grabbed the big one from the nest. Heavy, 7 or 8 pounds, plump as a little piglet. They ate every scrap of bark to get this plump. 2 huge catches, over 10 pounds of glorious food total. His hands were shaking, not from cold, from pure excitement. With this, his sister would finally eat a real meal. They could celebrate a real new year, but his head was pounding intensely from overusing his power. His sight kept going blurry. He squatted down, shoving clean snow into his mouth. The freezing shock helped clear his aching head a little. Then he heard it, a soft rustling in the dead grass nearby. Unmistakable. Something else was lurking right there. He snapped up the hatchet, holding it ready. He didn't dare activate his vision again, terrified he might actually pass out. Squinting hard at the moving grass, a wildly colorful head carefully poked out. A beautiful wild pheasant, looking absolutely gorgeous in the snow. Feathers like a literal rainbow. These birds are even smarter than rabbits. It stayed completely still during the fight, thinking the danger had passed. Their eyes locked. Trust me, you're going to want to see what happens next. Stick with me here. I held my breath while the pheasant froze in absolute terror. Then it bolted, wings wildly flapping, spraying white powder everywhere as it shot straight up. That is how pheasants launch, straight up before they glide. That upward moment, their one real weakness. 0 stones left. And my hatchet was way too heavy to toss right. I whipped out my trusty slingshot and grabbed a pellet. Back in the day, absolutely nobody in the whole village could outshoot me. The pellet flew, striking the bird perfectly square. But pheasants are incredibly tough. If you miss the head, they just keep going. It dropped some feathers, awkwardly flapping forward and losing speed. This was my ultimate chance. I launched myself like a giant net, crashing my entire body right into the snow over the bird. It squawked, wings thrashing wildly, talons leaving a harsh red scratch across my cheek. It burned like absolute fire, but my hands locked around its neck. Stay down, roared, twisting hard. Snap! It finally stopped moving. I climbed out of the deep snow, completely covered, a red mark on my face. Grinning like an absolute fool, I hoisted up that gorgeous bird, its long tail feathers sweeping the earth. Total jackpot today. 2 fat rabbits and 1 wild pheasant. You and I know veteran hunters hike for days for hauls like this. I scored everything right here in under 10 minutes. X-ray vision mixed with pure guts. The absolute best hunting combo. I pulled all 3 catches into my space. Then I quickly kicked fresh snow over the red stains, flipped the messy patches under, and swept my footprints with the tree branch to make it look like wild animals fought. I gathered up some heavy firewood and securely strapped it right to my back. Strolling back into the village, I was just a regular kid collecting wood. Absolutely nothing suspicious here. I stood up completely straight. The sun sat high above. Time to head home. My little sisters were waiting, and I seriously could not wait to see their excited faces. I sneaked back inside and locked absolutely everything tight. Gate, door, even shoving rags into the window cracks. Could not let a single delicious scent escape. Sui just stared like I had completely lost it. Brother, what are you doing? I stayed silent. I just grinned and reached right into my pocket dimension. Boom! A huge, colorful pheasant and 2 extremely plump rabbits dropped onto the bed from thin air. Sweatsuri's eyes widened like massive plates. Her jaw dropped completely open and just stayed there. Little Yaya crawled over, extending her tiny hand to touch the catches. But she was too nervous to actually do it. She glanced back at me, super shy but hopeful. Brother, is that really meat? Sweatsuri's voice trembled as happy tears just started falling uncontrollably. Back in these harsh times, people could barely find soup with 1 drop of oil. A bed entirely covered in food was way better than any dream. Why are you crying? This is a great thing. Now, hurry up and get the fire going. The entire room instantly came alive. You can practically feel the joy here. Sui hopped down for wood while Yaya happily waddled around, hugging the matchbox, face totally red with hype. I proudly took the pheasant to the cooking pit, gripping my trusty knife. Prepping poultry indoors requires real skill. Cannot make a mess anywhere, and definitely cannot let any smells leak out. I dug a deep hole beside the pit, removed the head, draining everything neatly right into the dirt, gutted it super fast. My hands honestly moved like I had been a pro chef for decades. All those guts went into the hole. Too strong a smell, too risky to keep. Brother, the intestines. Tetsu looked genuinely sad. That was technically still food. Toss it out, I commanded, without even looking up. We eat only the premium stuff now. No scraps. I fully buried the mess, packed that dirt down super tight, and stomped on it twice. Not a single whiff of the hunt was escaping. Now, the question was, how to cook this? A stew? No way. That scent would travel 3 miles. Braised? Even worse. Any cooking smoke would drag every starving person in the village right to our front door. Then I noticed the yellow clay covering our floor. Grab some water and mix this dirt into thick mud. She looked super confused, but quickly followed my instructions. I completely skipped plucking those feathers. This was legendary beggar's chicken. Wrap the entire bird completely in mud, feathers included. When the clay bakes hard, you crack it open, and the feathers peel straight off with the shell. It locks every bit of flavor securely inside. Soon enough, that gorgeous bird became just an ugly lump of yellow mud. The fire was roaring perfectly. I shoved the mud ball deep down and buried it under glowing hot charcoal. Just let it roast. I sat back on the bed. This method perfectly seals the scent inside the clay shell. Nothing leaks until you crack it open. That moment would belong to us alone. Time dragged on. The hot fire continuously crackled against the baked mud ball. The outer shell dried to gray-white. Thin cracks started spreading across it. Zero food smell in the air, but the room was definitely getting warmer. Little Yaya laid right on the bed's edge, massive eyes glued to the fire pit, drool literally running down her chin, and she didn't even realize it. Brother, is it finished yet? She probably asked that about 10 different times. Watch closely, because this part is magical. When the sun dipped west, I yanked the hot mud ball out from the coals using the heavy fire tongs. Even before cracking it, an incredibly fierce roasted scent leaked through those tiny cracks. Just one little hint, and my hungry stomach went completely wild. I flipped the heavy hatchet around and tapped the baked clay with the back of the blade. Crack! The thick shell split wide open, and that glorious smell trapped deep inside instantly exploded out like an erupting volcano. Stick with me. This roasted wild pheasant is absolute perfection. The amazing scent hit immediately. Both Suor and Yaya gasped in pure shock as I peeled the shell. The feathers slid off perfectly. Underneath was steaming hot meat, shining with rich oil and sizzling to absolute perfection. The smell was so intense it was dizzying. My mouth watered like crazy. I reached right in and ripped a drumstick completely free. Hot juices exploded the second the leg snapped, dripping everywhere and making the room smell heavenly. I handed Yaya the biggest piece. She grabbed it with both hands. It was huge. She kept tossing it around because of the intense heat. She took a massive bite of the best part. Her eyes went completely wide with shock. The incredible flavor absolutely froze her. Rich juices dripped right onto her heavy coat. Panicking, she scooped it up and licked her fingers clean. I handed the other leg to Suor. She refused, saying she only needed a wing. I told her to eat and shoved it in. One day, you will have endless food. So she bit in, crying happy tears as she ate. She was 9 years old. This was literally her first time tasting real, truly amazing meat. I took the leftover bones for myself. Not much meat, but the bones crunched incredibly soft. The marrow was honestly better than the meat. We just kept eating. That 3-pound bird vanished in 10 minutes. Yaya picked up every single crumb. I scraped all that rich oil into a pot, mixed in some millet and water, and boiled it for 10 minutes. It was a thin porridge, but drinking that warm fat felt incredibly smooth. When we finally finished, we all slumped against the wall, completely stuffed and super happy. Yaya had a cute round belly now. Her pale face finally looked healthy and bright again. I pulled my sisters close and scrubbed every bit of grease off their faces until red. Now pay attention. The happy vibe vanished. I looked completely serious. What did we eat? I stared hard. She guessed chicken. No, I whispered. Bitter, nasty, wild vegetable paste. Yaya flinched, looking upset. I softened my voice, but stayed super firm. People outside are ruthless. If they know we had meat, they will steal it and leave us freezing. Do you understand? Her face paled as she quickly covered her mouth. I will never tell, she promised. Only vegetable paste. Suer was older and understood perfectly. I know, brother. If anyone asks, we have zero food and are just drinking old pot water. Exactly. When everyone is starving and desperate, eating well in secret is a huge risk. To survive, you must act weak. Hide your true strength and hide your food. Burn those bones to ash immediately, I ordered. Suddenly, light footsteps echoed right outside. Someone was tiptoeing. My enhanced hearing picked it up. They stopped right by our outdoor cooking pit. Someone caught the scent. The clay shell had hidden it amazingly well. Watch closely here. When I cracked that shell, a tiny bit of smell definitely escaped. Most would ignore it, but a starving person has senses way sharper than a hound. That tiny aroma was a glowing beacon. I shushed my sisters, my eyes turning icy. I grabbed a sharp piece of broken brick from my bed. Then I slightly opened the front door. It was bright outside. Irliu was literally hanging over our wall, looking around like a total thief. His face was still super swollen from the massive beating he took earlier this morning. He was aching everywhere, but extreme hunger pushed him way harder. He smelled that rich roasted meat from my yard and could not believe it. How could I have meat? But he investigated anyway. Through that tiny crack, I stared him down like he was absolute garbage. No anger at all, just freezing calm. I stood completely hidden, casually tossing the brick. The smack of brick hitting my palm echoed intensely. We locked eyes, and trust me, he instantly knew he had to run away. Stick with me here. He remembered the pain. His throat gulped hard. Hunger instantly morphed into pure terror. I was just checking if my chicken escaped into your yard, he stuttered, voice shaking. I stayed completely silent. I just let a cold smirk show and squeezed the brick hard. That was plenty. His hands failed. His feet slipped entirely. He tumbled straight backward off the wall, crashing into jagged rocks. Probably shattered his tailbone. But the guy didn't even dare to scream. He quickly scrambled up, clutching his behind, and limped away at lightning speed. He kept glancing back like I would chase him and smash him with that brick. I watched until he completely vanished around the corner. Then I locked the door. Is he gone? Suetsu whispered, holding Yaya tight. Gone. I tossed the brick into the corner and dusted my hands. Remember this. People like him really only understand one single thing. Pure fear. Show weakness, and they crush you. Be an absolute beast, and they crumble. Got it? Brother is the strongest. Erlu did not go home after I terrified him. He ran straight to our village chief. I didn't know yet. I was inside cleaning up, tossing the last bone into my space when I heard incoming footsteps. Lots of them. 7 or 8 guys marching fast, heading right for us. Brother, someone is coming. Suede Sui's face turned extremely pale. Don't panic. The food was safe in my space. Nothing to find. I poured cold water into our clay pot, tossed in some bitter wild greens, and placed it over the fading embers, just warm enough to make it look like we were poorly cooking. Remember exactly what I taught you. I sat on the bed and calmly started sharpening my hatchet on a stone. Now pay attention. The gate violently shook from intense pounding. Wang Yi, open up. The village chief is here. Erlu's voice was high, dripping with pure satisfaction. I just took my sweet time strolling to the door. Instantly, Erlu shoved inside, his nose twitching like a greedy rat. See? I told you he would not open it. Guilty conscience. Where is the... He sniffed aggressively. Wait, where did the smell go? There was definitely a rich smell in here. Only burnt wood smoke and the awful bitterness of overcooked greens remained. That rich meat scent was completely gone. Chief Lu Chongzhen stepped in behind him, eyes sharp as daggers, scanning the entire place. He saw exactly what everyone else saw. Totally empty walls, a broken mouse hole, and a torn sleeping mat with straw poking right out. Plus, 2 tiny girls trembling violently under a ragged blanket, their eyes wide with absolute fear. On the wobbly table sat one clay pot. Erlu aggressively lunged for it, ripped the lid off, and desperately dug around. Just black wilted leaves in a broth so thin you could see your reflection. 0 drops of oil. This cannot be right at all. His eyes went completely manic. I definitely smelled cooked meat. I swear it. He hid it somewhere. He viciously tore the room apart like a rabid dog. He flipped the torn bed mat, furiously searched our empty cupboard, crawled around, and literally sniffed the dirty fire pit. Absolutely nothing. Just a pile of fresh ash that made him violently cough. I simply stood there, hands casually tucked away, watching his meltdown with 0 emotion. Uncle Erlu finally said, sounding completely deadpan, "If you are starving, and split these wild greens with you, but we really have 0 meat. Unless you want to cook me, I am 100 pounds. Go ahead." I know what you're thinking. Chief Lu's face turned furiously dark, but not at me. He stared at the greens. He checked my painfully thin sisters, then turned to Erlu. "Enough," he suddenly roared. Erlu instantly dropped the little spoon. "Jiang Erlu, is this what you consider capitalist indulgence? These kids are drinking literal weed soup, and you barged in to turn his house upside down? Are you even human?" "Chief, I swear I smelled nothing." Lu immediately kicked him right in the behind. "You are so hungry you are hallucinating. Harass Wang Yi again, and I will dock your points for the whole year. Get out." Erlu's face went purple. Every villager standing in the doorway was heavily staring at him, just whispering. He slunk out through the crowd with his tail completely tucked between his legs. The chief heavily sighed, looking at me with pure guilt. "Kid, do not take this to heart. The whole village is really struggling. When the relief grain arrives in a few days, I will try to get your family a few extra pounds." "Thank you, Chief." I just nodded, staying quiet. The loud crowd finally left. I shut the door and tightly locked it. Suer was honestly almost crying. "Brother, I was so scared." "It is completely fine." But peering through the door crack, I watched Erlu slowly stumble away. My eyes went totally cold again. This was definitely not over. I was right. Erlu could not let it go. Back home, he laid on his freezing bed, his empty stomach aggressively growling. He angrily stewed in his rage. He was absolutely positive about that meat smell. He had barely smelled real meat a handful of times in his entire life. You never forget that. He ruthlessly decided if he got nothing, I would never get peace either. He coldly thought about the thin paper on our windows, and the dry firewood in our yard. Just light the wood on fire, or violently punch through the window and throw freezing water inside. That would easily freeze us solid overnight. So where does this leave us? He wanted revenge. But trust me, I was definitely not done with him yet either. Alright, stick with me, we are diving right into some epic payback. Under bright moonlight, I stayed awake, knowing Early was definitely coming back. I carried my stool right into the yard, sitting in the cold snow with a heavy mountain knife resting on my knees. Grabbing my sharpening stone, I slowly started grinding the blade. Slow, incredibly steady strokes. That harsh sound of cold steel grinding against stone pierced the absolute silence. I didn't even need to look. My X-ray vision already showed Early sneaking along the outside wall, hiding a fire starter in his heavy coat, gripping a half brick in his hand. He wanted to torch our firewood or smash our windows, leaving us to completely freeze in our sleep. He pressed his eye right against a crack in the wall, peeking inside the yard. I just let him watch. I tested the sharp blade with my thumb. Perfect. Then I slowly lifted my head, staring directly at that exact crack where his cowardly eye was hiding. Thanks to my vision, I saw his face perfectly. But to him, it looked like I was staring through solid brick, staring straight into his guilty soul. Holding the shining knife up in the pale moonlight, I spoke out loud, almost like I was talking to myself. Perfect for chopping off thief paws. Then I whipped my arm forward, letting the heavy knife fly. It slammed into the wall with a loud thunk, echoing across the yard. The handle vibrated with a deep, low hum. That blade sank deep into the packed dirt, less than 6 inches from Erlu's nose on the other side. Suddenly, I heard a very pathetic wet sound. He actually wet himself. Falling backward, he completely failed to stand. desperately crawling through the snow on all fours for several meters before finally getting up and running away. Now watch carefully, because it gets wild. He never went home, spending the entire night shivering inside a village haystack. I walked over and pulled my heavy knife out of the wall. I checked his messy snow footprints and that embarrassing yellow stain. What a coward. But I knew simply scaring this guy wasn't remotely enough. A fool like Early forgets fear, just like a bad dog forgets punishment. To get rid of him for good, I needed to put him somewhere he couldn't escape. Somewhere with high walls, strict guards, and a few years of hard labor. The very next morning, I walked around the village, looking totally casual, hands behind my back, just a cheerful kid enjoying the morning air. But my route led straight past Erlu's house. His entire yard was a total wreck. Half his wall collapsed, looked way worse than mine. He literally never did honest work, yet somehow, he always possessed a little extra something. You and I both know nobody ever caught this thief red-handed, right? Standing on the slope behind his house, I simply looked down and switched on my overpowered X-ray vision. I saw right through his roof, past greasy blankets, seeing the whole rotten mess of his life. He wasn't home, definitely still hiding inside that haystack. I carefully searched every inch of his house. Broken pots, dirty bowls, even pickled vegetables stolen from neighbors. Just small stuff, random petty theft, definitely not enough for any serious punishment. Then my eyes instantly locked onto the cooking pit. Hidden under messy firewood, buried incredibly deep, sat a dusty burlap sack. I peered right through it. No grain, just heavy coils of something black. Canvas, rubber drive belts, exactly what ran the commune's tractor. My heart instantly jumped. Just a few days ago, that village tractor entirely broke down. The driver was totally furious, shouting loudly because that vital belt went missing. Nobody knew where it vanished. Now, I finally knew the truth. Thieves stole these specific belts to craft shoe soles. That tough rubber and thick canvas made the absolutely best material around. But this wasn't simple petty stealing. This was destroying collective farming equipment. Stealing precious commune property back in 1960. That was a major crime. 3 to 5 years inside a labor reform camp. Super easy. Absolutely perfect. I rushed home, finding scrap cigarette paper and one piece of charcoal. Holding that rough charcoal in my left hand, I hastily scratched out some ugly words. Jang Early hides the tractor belt under his cooking pit. My terrible left-handed writing was so bad, even my own father would never recognize it. Quickly, I wrapped my note tightly around a stone. At noon, while everyone ate outside, I casually strolled past Militia Captain Xiao's sturdy house. He was chopping wood in his yard. A huge guy, pure muscle, holding a temper way harder than his own axe. I simply flicked my wrist over his tall wall. The stone landed perfectly on the chopping block right before him. Who is there? Gripping his axe, he rushed straight to the gate. The alley remained completely empty. I was already hiding deep inside the trees. He grabbed the stone, unfolded my hidden note, and his expression instantly changed. The furious commune boss had been raging about that missing belt, demanding answers. If this is real, I will make that thief pay. Captain Zhao instantly grabbed 2 armed militiamen, marching straight over to Erlu's rundown house. Erlu had just crawled from his haystack, totally starving to the bone, weakly stumbling back home to find something to eat. He walked right into the trap. The militia was already inside. Captain Zhao, what is this about? His legs shook so terribly he could barely even stand. Shut up. Search everywhere. 2 determined militiamen marched straight toward the cooking pit, aggressively tossing aside the firewood, and dragged out the dusty burlap sack, shaking it open. That shiny black belt rolled out, commune serial number perfectly visible. So what do you and I learn today? Karma is absolutely brutal. So it was you little thief. Zhao slapped him so hard that Early spun 3 times on the spot. I am innocent. I didn't steal it. I just found it. Found it? Go find another one in the yard then. Take him away. You can wait for your big public trial. They dragged him off. Early was crying, screaming, calling out for his mom. Stick with me, this gets wild. I watched from behind a tree as they hauled him away. Two words came to mind. Felt epic. Next morning, the loudspeaker crackled to life. All commune members, drop what you're doing and report to the threshing ground. Village meeting time. Nobody skips out. Old Chief Lu's voice carried across the frozen fields. He was angry enough to scare the crows away. I was shoveling snow in the yard. I straightened right up, stuck the shovel straight into a snowbank, and brushed myself off. Told Sui to lock the door and stay inside, then headed out. The threshing ground was totally packed. Freezing wind cut through everyone, but nobody cared. Right now, a public meeting was basically prime entertainment, especially since they caught a thief stealing from the entire commune. A rough stage had been set up right in the center. Early was tied up tight with thick rope, a stolen black drive belt hanging around his neck like a huge sign of shame. He knelt there looking totally miserable, head hanging, face absolutely white, snot and tears frozen solidly on his cheeks. Militia Captain Zhao stood next to him, rifle in hand, face furious. Chief Lu stepped up holding a tin megaphone, his beard trembling with pure rage. Look at this. Look at what our village actually produced. We are starving through winter, and this guy reaches his hand right into the commune tractor. That belt keeps the machine running. Without it, how do we plow in the spring? Now watch this. The crowd erupted. Shameless. I knew he was no good. Turns out he is a total menace. Lock him away. People like him are nothing but pure poison. Anger spread through the crowd like wildfire. Back then, stealing from the collective was 100 times worse than taking from a neighbor. People picked up frozen dirt, clods, and rotten cabbage leaves, throwing them directly at the stage. Stop it. Don't hit me. I was totally wrong. Early whimpered, curling up as small as he possibly could. I stood quietly at the very edge of the crowd, hands tucked in my sleeves, half my face hidden behind my collar, just my eyes showing, completely calm, flat, like I was watching a show that had nothing to do with me. I looked at Early the way you'd look at a wild pig waiting to be caught. No pity, no gloating, just cold indifference. He must have totally felt my intense gaze. He raised his head and found me instantly in the big crowd. The tall, skinny teenager standing entirely alone in the corner. I saw his whole body jolt. He remembered last night. The knife that flew right past his nose. The exact eyes that absolutely terrified him. He absolutely knew it was me who turned him in. His mouth opened wide. He wanted to scream it out, point at me, and drag me down too. But he looked into my eyes and his throat locked completely shut. Not a single word came out. He did not dare. Some pure animal instinct told him that if he pointed his finger at me now, whatever happened next, inside prison or outside, would be way worse. You see it too, right? He understood something about me nobody else had figured out. I don't bark, I bite. He dropped his head and totally gave up. By order of the commune, Chief Lu read the final verdict. Jiang Early Yu is guilty of stealing collective property and sabotaging production, a crime of serious nature. He is sentenced to 3 years of reform through labor at the county work farm. The entire crowd cheered wildly. 2 militiamen grabbed Early Yu like a heavy sack and dragged him toward the freshly repaired tractor right at the village gate. Villagers stepped aside as he passed, like he carried terrible bad luck. I didn't move. When they dragged him right past me, his legs went soft. He squeezed his eyes shut and wouldn't even look at me. I didn't blink, didn't even glance down. The tractor coughed to life and rumbled away. Early's crying slowly faded into the wind and snow until there was absolutely nothing left. The massive crowd broke apart. A few women who loved gossip huddled together, whispering closely. Did you hear? Before he got caught, Early went to make major trouble at Wangya's place. That's right. I heard he came back last night so scared he was trembling. That orphan kid never says a single word, but turns out he's incredibly tough. I felt the massive change around me. The way people looked at me was totally different now. Before, it was just pity mixed with nothing. The kind of look you give someone you've completely written off. Now, there was something totally new in their eyes. Fear. A kid who could scare the village's most notorious troublemaker into pure terror, and then get that exact same man hauled off to a labor camp. That's not someone you ever mess with. Uncle Shangwei was in the crowd too. He'd been planning to come after me about his missing grain, but watching me stand alone in the snow, he felt a chill crawl up his spine. He decided to leave me alone. For right now, this was exactly what I wanted. So what do you and I take from this? In a world that fears the strong, this new reputation, "do not touch him," was worth far more than any locked door. I walked home through the snow. Stick with me. Nobody spoke. Behind me, the entire yard went totally and completely silent. Ahead was my wrecked little house, still falling apart, still freezing cold. But starting today, not a single person would ever dare kick that door again. I paced around our 3 rooms and took a really hard look. The walls were sturdy, but everything else was a total joke. The window paper flapped wildly in the wind. That front door was so incredibly rotten, a single light kick could easily bust it wide open. If my sisters were going to survive this freezing winter, I desperately had to fix this place. Since nobody dared to visit us anymore, it was the absolute perfect time to grind. I grabbed an axe and saw, marching straight toward the rugged mountain edge. The local village trees were basically thin, useless twigs. I needed dry red pines, hardwood, rot-resistant, and ready to use immediately without waiting. Normally, a regular guy would need a heavy sled and an entire team of strong men just to drag those massive 100-pound logs back home. I didn't need any of that. I just checked that nobody was around. I just reached out with my mind. Instantly, a massive pine trunk, thick as a huge bowl, vanished from the snow and teleported straight into my inventory. This was the ultimate cheat code of my special power. Basically, the absolute best delivery service ever. After 30 minutes in the woods, I scored 5 solid logs and a massive pile of premium pine kindling, the incredibly rich, resin-soaked type that burns insanely hot. Then I casually walked back home empty-handed, totally normal. Inside the yard, gate heavily locked. Now pay attention to this trick. I told Sui to stay away from the windows, waved my hand, and boom. Giant logs spawned instantly, kicking up heavy snow everywhere. I dropped my coat and got right to work in just my ragged shirt. Freezing at first, but I warmed up fast. First, I tore that pathetic door completely off the hinges. It was only good for firewood anyway. Then I grabbed my tools and started aggressively slicing into the pine. My carving technique wasn't perfect, but my crazy strength and epic X-ray vision let me see the exact wood grain. I knew exactly where to slice for zero resistance and maximum overall impact. I crafted perfect joints without using a single nail, just looking straight through the timber. That awesome power practically turned me into an unstoppable human woodworking machine. 2 hours later, I finished a huge door, 5 centimeters thick, pure, solid pine. Just staring at it actually made you feel incredibly safe. I attached 2 heavy crossbars on the back for bolts, then cleanly carved out a thick juju wood bar for a latch. I grunted, hoisted that 100-pound beast up, and dropped it onto the heavy hinges. Perfect fit, locked and barred. My horrible uncle could charge like an angry bull and completely bounce off. Even a massive wild boar would get a total concussion. Next up, windows. I ripped off every single piece of that pathetic paper. No glass? No problem. I had an awesome plan. I chopped leftover wood into thick strips and nailed a super tight lattice across the frames. It blocked some daylight, but it completely stopped any thieves. Behind the wooden lattice, I layered 2 heavy grass mats and crammed every single remaining gap with thick rags. The room definitely got darker, but the brutal, freezing wind that slashed through this place for years, finally gone. The inside temperature instantly started to climb. I wiped the sweat off and looked around. You're probably thinking what I am. This wasn't just a basic farmhouse anymore. It was basically a tiny fortress. Brother, it feels so warm. Titsui cheered, hugging Yaya on the bed, her face totally bright with real surprise. The freezing wind doesn't hit my head anymore. Yaya rolled around on the bed, loudly laughing. Brother, the door is massive. Uncle can never kick it open again. I happily ran my hand along the rough wood grain. That is exactly right. Nobody is kicking this door open ever again. A feeling I missed in both my lives finally settled right over me. Safety. Real, total safety. These 3 tiny rooms were our total territory. Now, our thick door shut, the entire freezing world could absolutely burn for all I cared. That night, once the girls fell asleep, I leaned against the wall and let my mind sink right into my magic space. Time to fully count what I had. First, a big pile of chopped firewood. Exactly a quarter of the space. Leftovers from the new door, plus my mountain stash. Enough to last 10 to 15 days. In this freezing winter, firewood meant heat, and heat simply meant total life. Second, the little blue cloth bag in the corner. Exactly 4 pounds of millet left. That was our absolute food safety net. Third, half a leftover pheasant carcass from earlier, still holding onto some juicy meat. Fourth, the true star of the collection, 2 frozen wild rabbits, basically solid as rocks. 7 or 8 pounds of meat, naturally enough for several incredibly hot, rich meals. Fifth, 1 entirely whole raw pheasant, guts totally removed, feathers still on. I quickly did the mental math. Grain, 4 pounds of millet. Meat, 2 rabbits, 1 whole pheasant, half a leftover pheasant. Fuel, 2 full weeks of warm firewood. Money, a few pennies. Pockets cleaner than my face. Sounds decent? No, not even close. This was the winter of 1960, the worst of the Great Famine. This food stash would easily last maybe half a month. Then what? Food definitely wasn't the only problem. We had 0 cooking oil, salt, and cotton. Sweetu and Ya's coats were 2 years old. The soft cotton inside had fully hardened into incredibly useless lumps. The house was warm, but trust me, outside they would completely freeze through. Yaya's shoes were completely worn out. And looking ahead, spring planting, grain taxes, and heavy government fees were fast approaching. Let's dive in. Without money or ration tickets, survival was basically impossible here. The hype of unlocking a storage system faded fast when reality hit hard. I stared at the totally empty floor of my spatial inventory. I absolutely had to fill it. All 10 cubic meters. Only when this entire space was stuffed to the ceiling with supplies could I, finally, stand tall and confident in this crazy new world. My eyes immediately locked onto the rabbit pelts and bright pheasant tail feathers. Out in the village, this loot was basically worthless. Maybe worth some corn. But inside the big city, a totally different story. City folks had cash and tickets, but finding meat was impossible. On the black market, the prices for fresh meat were absolutely skyrocketing. I definitely needed to visit the main county town, not just to grab oil and salt. I had to scout the whole area. I literally had X-ray vision and an inventory system. Wasting these broken skills just to hunt little rabbits was absolutely tragic. The county junk shop. Were there hidden treasures waiting? And the black market? Could I pull off some truly massive trades? And more importantly, could I secure a real weapon? I tapped the basic hatchet on my belt. Great for simple wood chopping, but facing a massive wild beast deep in the mountains? Way too short and incredibly risky. I absolutely needed a gun, even a handmade one. I snapped my eyes open in the pitch dark. They were practically glowing. But to dominate the city markets, I needed way better loot than just basic rabbit skins and feathers. I needed epic, incredibly valuable goods. That meant one more bold mountain expedition. Going way deeper this time, I rolled over, tucked the thin blanket around Yaya's small shoulders, and shut my eyes. Sleep. Time to restore my energy. Tomorrow, I would storm back into those mountains and see exactly what epic loot awaited me. Way before dawn, I snuck out while my sisters were fast asleep. Hatchet secured, coat tied incredibly tight, stepping right into the freezing morning. The morning air was brutally cold, literally like breathing pure ice. I marched straight toward yesterday's successful rabbit hunting spot. Any remaining scent was totally gone, buried under perfectly fresh snow. I crouched down, activating my X-ray vision to scan the frosty ground. Everything seemed super normal until something at the grove's edge caught my eye. Right under the blown snow, massive holes were totally smashed into the frozen earth. Watch closely. These weren't simple tracks. These were massive, split-hoof craters, punching straight through the thick snow into the solid ground below. My heart completely skipped a beat. A giant wild boar, clearly leading an entire pack of smaller ones. I instantly tracked their footprints with my vision. They marched straight from the deep mountains, circled through the freezing trees to chew roots, and then turned back. Those main tracks belonged to a massive beast weighing over 200 pounds. A literal walking mountain of food. During these incredibly tough times, one giant boar meant hundreds of pounds of food, enough to feed everyone or trade for insane amounts of cash and tickets. My hand instinctively grabbed my hatchet. Then I stopped. No, wait. I only held this tiny blade, and wild boars basically wear natural armor. Rock-hard mud and pine resin covering incredibly thick skin. Even a standard shotgun might fail here. Plus, this was an entire aggressive pack. If I panicked them and those massive beasts charged, yeah, you and I both know my X-ray vision wouldn't stop me from getting completely flattened. I had to stay patient. I carefully buried those tracks with fresh snow, so absolutely no other hunter could find them. These beasts were totally mine. My ultimate New Year's feast. Just wait until I return from the big city, I whispered, staring down that mountain trail. Wait until I get a proper weapon. Then it's game over. I permanently locked that exact location into my memory and headed home. Back inside, the entire house remained freezing. Pueri was huddled near the fire pit, struggling to spark a flame, coughing with a totally pale face. Yaya completely refused to leave her blankets, only showing her huge eyes. Then I spotted something that totally froze me in place. Sweatsui leaned over for wood, and the back of her heavy coat suddenly ripped wide open. What spilled out definitely wasn't cotton. It was just thin, flimsy, gray trash mixed with straw. That absolute garbage growing near the river. It looks puffy, but literally blocks zero cold. Freezing wind cuts right through. Our aunt supposedly fixed these coats for my sisters after our parents passed away, totally claiming she stuffed them with fresh cotton. All completely fake. Total lies. No wonder Sweatsui was constantly shivering. Every single day, this harsh reality hit me incredibly hard. I felt completely overwhelmed. It's fine, brother. I'm not cold, Tutsui nervously blurted out, quickly hiding the massive tear. Just let me sew it up. I spoke with pure frustration. A stray dog wouldn't wear this garbage. I quickly checked our salt jar. Totally empty. Scraped completely clean during yesterday's huge meal. Not even a single white speck remained at the bottom. You can skip meat, but never salt. Zero salt equals absolutely zero energy. No walking, no working. That ripped coat. This totally empty jar. My sister's trusting eyes. The pure excitement of finding those tracks faded entirely under the crushing weight of reality. Those mountain beasts were just a dream. This crushing poverty was the real enemy. Trust me, you're gonna want to see what happens next. Stick with me here. No more waiting. He slammed his fist on the bed frame. Town day today. He planned to collect more pelts first, but his sisters were freezing with zero salt. Every single day he delayed was another day they suffered out here. He pulled Sweatsu up from the fire and locked the door behind him. Food stayed in the cabinet. He took out one rabbit pelt, that wild pheasant, and poured about 2 or 3 pounds of millet straight into a cloth bag. Grain worked way better than cash right now. On the black market, millet was pure gold. Brother, you are going to the county. Tutu looked incredibly worried. Folks say wolves and bandits roam that road. I will be fine. Your brother is super tough to beat. He packed everything into a patched burlap sack, tucked his trusty hatchet under his coat, and knelt right down in front of Suits, hands on her shoulders, totally serious. After I head out the door, wedge that log behind it. Do not open for anyone unless you hear my voice. Not the chief, nobody. If anyone tries breaking in, you throw boiling hot water. Grab your knife. Get it? She nodded so hard her little braids bounced. I get it. He looked at Yaya, still buried in her blankets. Be good. Stay in bed. When brother returns, I will bring big steamed buns and fresh new clothes. I want candy. A tiny hand shot right out from the covers. I will buy the biggest piece ever. He ruffled her hair, stood up, and never looked back. Pulled everything into his space, pushed the heavy door open, and faced the freezing wind. The bolt dropped behind him. Perfect. He pulled his hat super low over his eyes. County town and the black market. Here we go. The village was 30 miles from town on flat ground. Normally a 2 or 3 hour walk, but this was the frozen northeast. Deep winter mountain trails completely buried under snow. No road existed, just endless white. In the deepest spots, snow reached up to his thighs. Even shallow parts covered his ankles. Every single step was an absolute battle out here. Plant a foot, pull the leg free, and repeat. The harsh wind lashed his face like a whip. He could not stop out here between nowhere and nowhere. Resting meant his sweat cooled, freezing him solid on the spot. About 10 miles in, he hit a stretch of rough, rocky ground, exactly where dangerous wild animals love lurking. He slowed down and switched into what he called radar mode. Walk a few hundred meters, flash the vision, scan the area, switch off, keep moving. He could not burn through his mental energy all at once. One scan caught something behind a massive, weathered boulder. 2 faint green glowing spots. He focused. A lone wolf, skinny as a skeleton, gray fur matted and filthy, curled in a crack between rocks, just watching the path. One back leg was totally injured, hanging limp. This was the most dangerous kind, cast out from its pack, or crippled, and entirely alone. Pay attention here. Starving wolves attack humans without any hesitation. It was set up right beside the trail. Any normal person walking past gets ambushed. One chomp, and you are lucky to walk away. He gripped the hatchet inside his sleeve, but he never charged in. The wolf was way too skinny, fur totally ragged, just not worth risking a crazy fight over. Making a mess here might attract other predators. Better to completely avoid that trouble. He used his vision, locking the wolf's position, picking a route, staying just outside its attack range, completely downwind, so the beast could not smell him. The wolf's ears perked up, its nose twitched, but with zero scent and nothing visible. It hesitated and just stayed put. He slipped past without making a sound, never relaxed until he was 2 miles clear, confirming it had not followed. That was the travel superpower of his X-ray vision. Danger avoidance. Another half hour of trudging. The sun climbed high, glaring off the snow until his eyes ached. His stomach started growling loudly. He left in such a rush, he never ate. He was finding a sheltered spot to chew some dried food when 2 gray-brown shapes on a snow slope ahead made him totally freeze. Roe deer, the legendary goofy animal of the Northeast. One big, one small, standing right on the slope, pawing through snow, finding grass roots. They were under 50 meters from the trail. When they saw him stop, they never even ran. They raised their heads, ears standing straight up, huge round eyes staring with pure curiosity. The white fur on their rumps puffed out like 2 little flowers. I know what you are thinking. This really was the old saying, coming alive. Club a deer, scoop up fish. Free meals. Walking right up to him. Roe deer are so incredibly curious that without loud noise, they will just stand there watching you forever. Shoot and miss. They run off, then come back to check what made that loud bang. But he had absolutely no gun, and pulling living things into his space was completely impossible. An absolute rule. He tried it once with a bug, and his brain nearly melted. They had to be taken down first. He set down his sack slowly. Instead of drawing his hatchet, he bent down, prying 2 fist-sized chunks of frozen dirt from the ground. Out here rocks were rare, but frozen earth was hard as solid iron. You are going to want to see this. One hit with these delivers huge impact. He checked the terrain. Both animals stood trapped inside a deep snow pocket, drifts way up past their bellies. Stick with me here. This is where our guy makes his move. Deep snow meant trapped legs for them. I took a breath and advanced, avoiding a straight path, zigzagging slowly, keeping it super casual, just an ordinary guy passing right through. Kept the big one locked in my side vision. 50 meters. 40. 30. The giant beast got spooked, barked loud, and turned to run. Boom! My legs exploded forward. I stamped deep into the snow and launched myself completely. The frozen dirt left my grip. 30 meters out, perfectly aimed. That chunk flew in a flawlessly straight line. Direct hit to the big deer's head. No sound at all. It dropped like a fallen tree, totally stunned in the snow. The small one panicked and bolted. But that deep snow? Too much. It stumbled, hooves punching through, completely stuck. I was already there, hatchet out, sprinting like a wild cat. Before the little guy could pull free and gain speed, I swung. The flat blade cracked its skull. It crumpled instantly. One finished for good, the other knocked out cold. I secured the big one with the quick slice to drain it, then touched both warm bodies. Fake. Both animals vanished into my storage space. I dusted off my hands, grinning until it hurt. Absolute peak luck. Hadn't even reached town, and my fortune doubled. 2 roe deer, 50 or 60 pounds of pure meat. Their meat is tender and fine, and those hides make perfect bedding. I gazed toward the distant hills. The county town's outline finally appeared. Chimneys puffing black smoke, giving a faint hint of crowds and buildings ahead. That is where the supplies waited. Salt, cotton, everything my sisters needed, and maybe more. Now watch closely. I tapped the hatchet on my belt, eye sharpening. Would these town folks be tougher than wild animals? The county town finally showed up around mid-morning. Honestly, it looked just as miserable as our village. Gray walls plastered with red slogans. People shuffling by with hollow faces. A massive line waiting for ration matches and kerosene. I completely avoided the crowds, ducked right into an empty alley, navigated a crazy maze, and stopped behind an abandoned outhouse. Garbage and frozen mess everywhere. Nobody around. Preparation time. I closed my eyes, sinking into my space. Selling whole deer? Way too flashy for this place. Using pure mind control on the hatchet, I processed the deer inside my space. Removed the heads, hooves, and hides. Super clumsy work, but mental control made it decent. I kept only the premium cuts, leg meat and tenderloin. 20 pounds total. Left the bones for later. Next step, a total makeover. In the corner sat my dad's old sheepskin coat. Filthy, smelly, totally falling apart. I never threw it out, and today, absolutely perfect. Swapped my clean coat for it. Pulled down a ratty fur hat to hide half my face. Still not nearly enough disguise. I grabbed a handful of ground ash and dirt, smearing it aggressively all over my face and my hands. My clean skin turned yellowish black, like I'd just escaped a coal pit. Stuffed rags under the coat for a fake hump. When I stood up, the young hunter vanished. Instead, a bent-over, coughing, super filthy old man who shuffled his feet. Tested the voice. Low, super raspy, dry. Even Sweetu would never recognize me now. I headed straight to the west side, arriving at an abandoned brick factory left over from the Japanese occupation. You and I know exactly what this is. The ghost market. Crumbling walls, tall dead weeds, and endless escape routes everywhere. A few really rough-looking guys squatted by the outer wall, smoking and watching every single passerby. Lookouts. I shuffled right past them without even glancing sideways. They just gave me one look. Just another dirty refugee trading for survival food. The most common sight here. One guy blew a smoke ring, completely ignoring me. I was inside, super dark and eerily quiet. Nothing like your normal market. Dozens of tiny stalls hid behind broken bricks and half-collapsed walls. Every single seller kept their face covered or hat low. Zero shouting. Buyers and sellers communicated strictly with hand signals or quiet little whispers. If trouble sparked, every single person here could vanish through the cracks in under 60 seconds. I found a safe corner away from the wind, pulled my burlap sack from storage, and dropped it on the ground. Didn't open it, just tucked hands in my sleeves, squinting like a tired farmer soaking up sun. Kept my eyes peeled on the crowd, just waiting for that perfect buyer. People walked past without slowing down. Everyone assumed this dirty sack just held rotten sweet potatoes or dry weeds, because that is what most people sold here. Then, a middle-aged guy in a neat suit and glasses suddenly stopped. His clothes were plain, but those leather shoes were polished to an absolute shine. Clearly a government official, holding an empty bag, eyes totally desperate. And trust me, you are going to want to see what happens next. "Old man, got any good grain?" he whispered quietly, really not expecting much. You and I are about to see his jaw drop. I just quietly opened the sack. He looked inside casually, but then his eyes practically bulged out. He started breathing super fast. He spotted gray fur, a wild rabbit, and right underneath, perfect blocks of fresh meat. Finding fresh roe deer in a freezing, snowy town where absolutely everyone is starving. That sack of wild meat was basically a treasure chest. He was so insanely thrilled he could barely even speak. He reached right for the bag. I instantly slapped it closed, looking up with a super serious voice. "Are you buying?" "Yes, absolutely." He eagerly rubbed his hands together, looking around quickly, totally terrified that someone else might spot us. "How much do you have?" "I will buy everything." His whisper was way too loud, and a few people nearby actually turned to look. "Take everything?" I gave a light laugh. "Can you really afford it all?" I opened the bag up a bit wider. This time, a bunch of people walking past caught a peek. "Wow, that is meat," someone yelled out loud. That single shout sparked pure chaos. The quiet corner burst to life. 7 or 8 people swarmed over, eyes gleaming with pure hunger. Now pay attention to this wild moment. Things are heating up. "Old man, give me that rabbit." "Back off. I was here first. I will buy everything. I have national grain tickets." Just a second ago, absolutely nobody cared about this dusty little corner at all. But now, it was the main spot of the whole black market. I stayed completely calm, sitting right on top of the sack to block their grabbing hands. "No grabbing," I warned slowly. "If anyone grabs, I absolutely will not sell." The crowd quieted down instantly, but their eyes stayed glued to the bag like magnets. The guy with glasses pushed forward. "Just name your price. I have cash and ration tickets." I calmly held up exactly 2 fingers. 2 yuan for every single pound. Normally, that price is straight up robbery. Pork is usually way cheaper. But here, on the black market, during a shortage, 2 yuan was an absolute steal. Everyone knew it. Before they could relax, I added another condition. No grain tickets, cash only, and rare industrial coupons. I didn't need grain tickets. I had plenty stored in my inventory space. Plus, those tickets were strictly limited by region anyway. What I really wanted were industrial coupons. You could not buy pots, fabric, shoes, or even a brand new bicycle without having those special vouchers. Only the city factory workers got those. Farm workers like me basically never saw them. Industrial coupons? A few faces instantly dropped. Those were super rare. "I have some." The glasses guy reached into his pocket, pulling out a whole stack. "I work at the steel factory. Give me 5 pounds of roe deer and 1 whole rabbit." He eagerly counted out 10 yuan and carefully handed over several colorful coupons. I quickly checked them all. Real cash. Perfectly clear watermarks. Deal. I grabbed my hatchet, which totally just looked like some rusty knife to the crowd, and sliced off a nice thick chunk of deer meat. Grabbed a rabbit. Didn't weigh it. Just went by pure feel. Around 5 pounds there. Any extra is totally on the house. He happily bounced it in his hands with a massive smile. Sticking the meat in his bag, he hid it and quickly ran off like a total thief. After that very first sale, the whole crowd went absolutely crazy. "I have 3 industrial coupons. Give me 2 pounds. I have cash." "No coupons? 3 yuan a pound." "Deal." I sat upon that sack like a true king on his throne, taking cash, grabbing those sweet coupons, chopping meat, hands steady, eyes calm, watching that sweet stack of cash grow thicker and thicker. I know you're feeling this hype. Piling up those coupons felt better than catching wild game. This was basically real-life Monopoly. This was an absolute seller's market. When everything is scarce, Whoever holds the goods holds all the real power. Under 30 minutes later, the sack was completely empty. Even the pheasant sold. A sweet grandma bought it using 2 cloth tickets and 5 whole yuan. She wanted to make soup for her sweet grandson. I stood up and dusted myself off. Total profit? Over 130 whole yuan. Around a dozen industrial coupons, plus some incredibly rare cloth and sugar tickets. 130 yuan. Back when strong workers barely made pennies a day, this cash was an absolute fortune. It was enough for my whole family to live amazingly well for years. The folks who missed out crowded around begging for more. Nothing left, I said, tucking the empty sack under my arm, while still acting hunched and coughing. That was everything my family had. Just trying to scrape together some medicine money. I carefully shuffled through the crowd, heading for the exit, but I could definitely feel it. A couple pairs of eyes tracking my movements. And it was not about missing out on the sale. Oh no, those were intensely greedy eyes. Hungry wolves locked onto a rich sheep. I pulled my hat down lower, letting a totally cold, confident smile flash across my face. Obviously, cash always attracts predators, but I came perfectly prepared for this. Outside the brick factory, I kept up my disguise, still just a shuffling, bent old man. I still had some shopping to do. I hit the supply shop. Too crowded to buy a lot, so I kept things super simple. And that is where we leave it. I used my new tickets for 2 pounds of salt, cotton fabric, and that heavy iron padlock I really wanted. You and I are about to see something wild. I hid my gear and ducked into an alleyway. 2 guys were trailing me, refusing to quit. Both wore gray coats with fake red armbands on their sleeves. Those armbands were completely crooked, missing the official stamps. Plus, they strutted around like common street punks, not real officers. They were exactly what I had suspected. Pure thieves who camped outside the ghost market, stalking anyone making a profit to shake them down or take it all by force. An isolated old man holding a huge fortune? Perfect target. To them, I was just completely easy prey. So I let them follow, picking the absolute, narrowest, most utterly empty alleys I could possibly find. We twisted deeper into a ruined demolition zone, crumbling walls, deep snow, and literally 0 stray dogs around. I walked into a tight dead end, barely 2 meters wide. A smashed wall totally blocked the exit. Nowhere left to run. I stopped moving. Why did you stop? Mocking laughter echoed as the 2 thugs strolled up, totally plugging the entrance. The tall guy rocked a nasty scar across his face, flipping a folding blade that perfectly caught the chilling winter light. The short guy gripped a solid wooden club wrapped in sheet metal. Hey, Grandpa, lend us some cash. Scarface grinned widely, stepping closer. We saw your huge show at the brick factory. 100 something? Isn't that super heavy in your pocket? I turned around, acting hunched and trembling inside my thick coat. Please, my friends, I only sold a little game meat for my medicine money. Cut the act. The shorter guy forcefully spat on the ground. Hand over the cash and those tickets, and we let you walk. Otherwise, he aggressively smacked his club against the wall, banging loudly. We will totally break that bum leg of yours. They closed in closely, front and back, completely pinning me against the wall. Pay attention, because here is where it gets good. Underneath that ratty fur hat, I had secretly switched on my incredible X-ray vision. I looked straight through their coats. Scarface hid large bills inside his inner pocket, plus a long spring-loaded knife safely tucked away. The short guy had a set of keys and heavy iron knuckles equipped right on his belt. Absolutely nothing else. No extra weapons, no backup, hiding behind the walls. Just these 2 absolute punks. The tension inside my chest totally dissolved. If they wanted a dirty street fight, they chose the absolutely wrong target. This place was completely deserted. Nobody was watching. Why not grab a sweet little bonus for today's earnings? I stopped, trembling, slowly straightening my back. The hunch popped up vertebra by vertebra, with a soft cracking sound. The hat lifted higher. The cowering, weak man vanished, shoulders expanding and spine stretching until a tall, broad-shouldered young guy stood where the beggar originally cowered. My confident face was still heavily covered in ash, but the proud posture, the energy, completely different person. Scarface completely froze, knife hand stopping mid-flip. "Who are you?" I reached up, yanked off the hat, tossing it onto a snowbank. Underneath was a youthful face. Hard, incredibly cold. The face of a guy who definitely wasn't prey. "Lend you cash?" My voice definitely wasn't raspy anymore. It sounded razor sharp. "Funny, I'm currently broke too." I casually rolled my wrists. My knuckles cracked one by one. "How much do you have on you? Go ahead. Empty your pockets." The game completely flipped. We all saw this coming. The hunters became the hunted. "You are done." Scarface was furious. A veteran with knife skills. Even though his elderly target suddenly transformed into a totally young guy, he foolishly figured youth automatically meant rookie inexperience. He barked at his partner to guard the exit, then aggressively flipped his folding knife into a reverse grip. No flashy moves. He lunged straight at my gut like a striking snake. A vicious stab aimed to completely destroy my stomach. But to my eyes, everything changed. Vision activated. The world slowed way down, his coat turning transparent. I saw his arm muscles intensely contract, their energy pumping faster through his veins. I could literally trace the exact path his knife would take. A glowing red line traced through the air, straight thrust toward my lower left stomach. Way too slow. When the blade reached 3 inches away, I moved. Not backward, forward. I firmly planted my left foot, twisting my right side just perfectly enough. The blade slid right past me, cutting a layer of sheepskin, but missing entirely. He severely overcommitted, his massive weight carrying him forward. Totally off balance. That was my opening. I skipped blocking and just kicked, aiming a brutal sidekick at his absolute weakest point. The side of his right knee, the very leg holding all his weight. Crack. The brutal sound of snapping bone echoed through the alley like a dry branch breaking. His pain scream barely escaped before he fully collapsed sideways. His lower leg dramatically bent at a horrifying angle. Legs are definitely not supposed to ever bend. There, pure, shocking agony instantly poured out. One clean move, one guy down. That is exactly what X-ray vision plus perfect prediction does. The short guy was desperately charging, club raised. He saw exactly what just happened to his partner, hands aggressively shaking. But he was fully committed now. "Trust me, you must see what happens next. I will crush you." He swung with his eyes totally shut. Pure panic, zero technique. Let's dive in. My cheap vision had already scanned every single one of his weaknesses. His guard was garbage. Arms open, legs totally unsteady under all that weight. I stood firm. I stepped straight into him. The distance closed so incredibly fast. His club barely brushed my shoulder. Zero impact. There, my glowing fist was already launching upward. An absolute cannonball of an uppercut exploded right into his bottom jaw. A heavy crunch echoed, solid bone destroying bone. The guy made absolutely zero sound. His head whipped back, his entire body froze stiff, and he crashed backward like timber. Teeth scattered everywhere. He slammed into the freezing snow, totally knocked out before he even landed. Under 5 seconds from that first wild lunge to dropping both guys completely flat. I just stood there, exhaled a cool puff of frosty mist, and stared them down. Scarface violently gripped his shattered leg, rolling through the icy snow, sweating buckets, way too agonized to even manage a basic scream. Just sheer panic inside his eyes. I crouched down low, snatched his fallen pocket knife, and casually tossed it. "Time to talk about that debt," I casually mentioned. The shiny metal reflected winter glare straight across his absolutely terrified, twisted face. My face stayed completely chill, exactly like when I hunted wild mountain rabbits. Cool, precise, and entirely ruthless. "Please, boss, I messed up. I had zero clue who you actually were." He frantically dug into his pockets. "Take the cash, everything, just let me live." He was genuinely terrified. Now watch closely. He finally realized my speed meant I was highly trained. A fighter who meant absolute serious business. In this hidden alleyway, Anyone buried deep under freezing snow would stay lost until the spring. Melt. Or maybe forever. I grabbed his jacket collar, lifting him easily off the ground like a plucked chicken. That cash you carry is mine now, I firmly stated. I want your money immediately. I shoved my hand straight inside his heavy coat, aggressively ripping open the lining. A sloppy stack of paper bills, random notes, plus some loose coins. Roughly 17 or 18 yuan total. Just an absolutely broke piece of garbage. I simply pocketed the whole stash. But wait, I was not finished. My special sight revealed he had another hidden item right there. I felt down along his waistline. He tried to block me, one freezing glare from me, and his hand stopped completely. From a secret pouch stitched inside his belt, I yanked out a covered dagger, way better quality than his cheap, rusty folding blade. Forged from heavy steel, super thick blade, a deep groove carved along the middle, and edges glowing with a faint blue. Rough design, but completely dangerous. 100 times better than my old hatchet. Awesome. My eyes totally sparkled. I slipped it right into my boot, dropped Scarface like useless trash, and checked the knocked out heavy guy for remaining extra loot. A loud key ring, rusty brass knuckles, some crumpled food tickets, and barely over 3 yuan in total cash value. I boldly swiped everything, 21 yuan and 30 cents from both guys combined. Basically a normal factory worker's entire monthly salary right there. You and I both know looting bad guys is the quickest way to gain wealth. I could not simply leave them exposed, even totally wrecked. If someone discovered them here, they might try coming back for revenge later. I spotted a giant pile of frozen trash and cold ash down the alleyway. Grabbing Scarface by his good leg, I dragged him through icy snow. What are you doing to me? He was shaking so terribly he could barely speak. Just finding you a cozy spot. I swung him like a potato sack, tossing him onto the stinking pile. Then I grabbed the unconscious guy's heavy weight and hurled him up too. Two grown men casually stacked upon rotten cabbage and freezing dust. I kicked broken baskets and snow over them until they were completely half buried, sheltered from wind, so they would not freeze completely solid overnight. But they really wished they had. More than physical damage, this was pure humiliation, the kind that completely destroys egos. Remember my face? I asked, standing above the pile, casually dusting off my hands. Scarface peeked one terrified eye outward from the trash. Next time, much closer before starting trouble. Some targets are completely above your level. I picked up my furry hat, placed it back on, and the youthful fighter vanished. The shuffling, harmless old man persona instantly returned. I strolled out of the alleyway and blended right into the thin street crowd. Over 150 yuan inside my coat, a steel blade in my boot, and a nice fistful of ration tickets in my pocket. This underground market trip had succeeded far better than I originally dreamed. Time to spend new cash. I found an empty public restroom, ducked inside quickly, and stripped off my sheepskin disguise. Stuffed it safely away along with the hat. That outfit was totally burned. Now, highly recognizable. I pulled out my own patched yet clean winter coat and washed the ash off my face using snow. Now looked like a regular village teenager. Nothing special. I headed directly toward the local supply shop, the biggest store around, featuring 3 massive tile roofs with a bold community service sign displayed above the door. Even during winter, the place was completely packed. The air hit me with wild smells of soy sauce, smoke, and face cream. The counters were tall glass cases. Trust me, you will love what happens next. All right, you and I are diving right in. The clerks wore blue uniforms, acting completely arrogant. Working there was basically a top-tier job back then. Everyone practically had to bow down. Our boy pushed straight to the front. I need salt, comrade. He slapped his bag down. The lazy clerk just chewed her seeds. Did not even blink. How much? Got the ticket. Fill it. He slammed his ticket on the glass. Fill it up. 5 pounds. Are you absolutely sure? Nobody ever bought that much. 5 pounds? She shrugged and scooped the white salt. That bag got super heavy really fast. 5 pounds is a whole year supply. Next up, the fabric counter. A girl was sorting colorful cloth. That bright blue and white print. 6 feet, please. Absolutely stunning pattern. His sister would look amazing in that. Plus 8 feet of thick, dark cloth for himself. Perfect for mountain trips. The girl hesitated. This is expensive stuff. You need ration tickets too. He casually pulled out a massive stack of cash and tickets. Big bills mixed right in with small ones. Her eyes went wide. A poor farm kid with fat stacks? Absolute shocker right there. Right away, sir. Instant mood change. She measured and cut like a total pro. Moving to snacks. Half a pound of colorful hard candies wrapped up in shiny plastic. The little sister would go totally crazy. Plus 2 tins of thick hand lotion. Her poor small hands were hurting from freezing cold. It broke his heart, honestly. He cleared that store like an absolute boss. Salt, cloth, sweet can, oil, sewing needles, plus thread. Now pay attention here. His arms got packed, so he secretly slipped items into his magical space. Just enough stayed visible to avoid looking totally insane. Who is this kid? Where did he get crazy money? Dressed like a farmer, but spending like a king. Expensive fruit candy? I cannot afford that. People stared with pure jealousy, curiosity, and huge suspicion. He felt their glares, but did not care. Buying everything without checking prices felt like absolute, pure magic. That terrible, crushing poverty was finally left completely in the dust behind him. Final stop was hardware. I will take that lock. Pointing at a massive black iron padlock. Tough as steel. Need a special coupon, the guy said. Bam, he slapped one down. Holding that heavy lock felt incredible. This was the ultimate defense for his sweet little family. With the reinforced door, he could explore the mountains without panicking about his sisters being left all alone. Shopping complete. The sky was getting dark. This town trip was a massive success. Made tons of cash. Bought awesome gear. Time to finally head back home. Grabbing his bags, he stepped out into the freezing, snowy wind. Walking tall and feeling absolutely fantastic right now. Far from town with zero trackers. He finally stopped and stood completely straight for the very first time today. First move, dropping that insanely heavy burlap sack, full of fabric, salt, and that giant padlock. You and I both know that weight is brutal. In town, he played it completely cool. So nobody realized his secret. Out here, no way. That heavy sack instantly vanished into his space. Time for a coat swap. Smelled weird, but blocked that freezing wind perfectly. Walking home felt super light and incredibly easy. Having a magic storage space is just cheating. 30 miles of snow is torture for normal people. For him, a breezy walk. Checking inventory on the road. One deer was fully prepared and sold for massive stacks of cash. The other deer was frozen solid inside his space, plus tons of extra meat to feast on for weeks. Only bummer, no pure cotton left at the store. The new winter coat project had to wait. He would use the fabric as a shell for now. 30 miles flew by in an absolute flash. Village smoke appeared along with the old entrance tree. Time to put on an epic performance. He ditched the warm coat, switching back to his ragged clothes to keep up the poor orphan disguise. Then he summoned that massive, heavy sack back into the deep, freezing white snow, rubbing snow on his face until it looked freezing. Tilted his hat, getting completely covered in frost. He threw the heavy sack up, hunched over, and fake gasped like he had been suffering all day. Nailed it. So what do you and I learn today? Showing off magic powers gets you reported. He had to perfectly fake the entire exhausting journey. Stick with me here. I shuffled into town. Neighbors instantly staring at my heavy sack. Wang Yi, what is all that? Looks heavy, they pried. I panted hard, faking it. Nothing much. Just town junkyard scraps. Just metal and rags for the house. I kept walking, completely hiding the stash from their nosy eyes, and headed straight for my yard. Sue, open up. It is me. Pure silence. Then a cautious, tiny voice behind the door asked, is that really you, brother? What do we lock up with? Smart girl. I grinned wide. The door bolt. Guju. Now open up. I brought us some amazing stuff. The crossbar scraped back. The door cracked open. Sui peeked out, saw it was actually me, and threw the door wide open. Brother, she ran right into me, her eyes red. Inside. Quick. I dragged the heavy sack indoors, instantly hanging a brand new iron padlock on the door bracket. Click. Locked. Shut. That crisp sound was honestly the most beautiful thing I had heard all day. Inside, the room felt cozy. Yaya popped out of the blankets like a cute groundhog. Brother, you promised me sweet candy. I did. I excitedly opened the sack right on the bed. First, 5 pounds of white salt poured straight into our empty jar, filling it to the very brim. No more flavorless meals for us. Next came fabric, a full bolt of blue and white cotton print, plus tough black work cloth. Sui just stared, her eyes going completely wide. She reached out, touching the material. Soft, thick, honestly a million times better than that old fluffy coat she was wearing. This is for you, I smiled, pushing the flowered cloth into her arms. No cotton filling yet, but we will make this an awesome outer jacket. It will block the wind. When I find cotton later, we will finish it. Right, brother, it is so pretty. She could not stop stroking it. And look at this. I unwrapped some fruit candies, popping one directly into little Yaya's mouth. Her eyes went huge. The sweetness melted across her tongue, and her whole face scrunched up with pure joy. Tiny feet kicked under the blanket. So sweet, brother. Finally, I pulled out the 2 special tins of soothing clam cream. I took Sui's hand, covered in swollen frostbite sores, and gently rubbed the healing cream into her cracked skin. That night, our broken little house was filled with pure laughter, for the very first time in what felt like forever. For dinner, pulled a chunk of wild deer tenderloin straight from my spatial inventory, about 1.5 pounds. I sliced it thin, rubbed it with our new salt, and stir-fried it up. No onions, garlic, or ginger, but pure wild game seasoned beautifully. Served alongside bowls of thick millet porridge. Absolute heaven. After eating until we literally could not move, Sui sat by the fire, happily measuring her cloth to plan out her brand new jacket. I relaxed on the warm bed, pulled the steel dagger from my boot, wiped it spotless, and happily counted through my growing stack of bills just one more time. Now pay attention here. That cash felt like solid ground, but it simply was not enough. I silently stared out the window at the pitch-black night sky. Tomorrow was the 23rd of the 12th month, Little New Year's Eve. The village grain stores were running dangerously low every single day. Everyone was getting desperate. Meanwhile, deep in those mountains, a huge herd of wild boars was waiting for me. Time to figure out exactly how to catch them all. Little New Year's Eve arrived. A few bright firecrackers popped loudly outside from those wealthier families celebrating. We could not, but our home felt warmer than any holiday. Sui woke up early, tightly hugging her beautiful new blue fabric, eagerly planning to sew a jacket over her ruined coat. Little Yaya sat happily on the bed, enjoying candy, watching me work. I was bent over a large pile of rusty wire I had bought yesterday, snipping it into sections with old pliers. Brother, that rusty wire is falling apart. What could it possibly be good for? Sui asked me. Special New Year gifts for the mountain animals. A simple hatchet and dagger were nowhere near enough for a boar. You and I know fighting a massive pig is crazy dangerous. The smartest hunters just let the prey defeat themselves. I snipped the wire into meter-long pieces. Single strands were way too weak. A raging wild boar would snap them instantly. So, I twisted 3 wire strands together, using a stick as a handle, while Sui held the opposite end. The braided wires formed a heavy cable that would not snap, no matter how hard I pulled. Then, I crafted the snares, a fixed tight knot on one side. The opposite end threaded straight through to create a sliding loop. This loop had to snap shut the second anything pushed through. I grabbed some clam cream, rubbing it on the joints to keep them perfectly slippery. Brother, that cream is for our faces. Sui yelped loudly. This is for their faces, I joked. I tested one right on the bed frame. A quick wrist flick, and the metal loop snapped tight, biting deep into the wood. Once a wild boar got its leg caught inside. Absolutely nothing short of breaking its own bones would ever set it free. 5 huge snares for boars, plus smaller ones for rabbits. Then I carefully carved thick wooden stakes, making them extra sharp on one end and notched on the other. Everything packed into the sack, dagger in my boot, thick coat tied tight. Sui, lock that door. Trust me, you will want to see what happens next. She hugged little Yaya, watching me with worried eyes. Be careful, brother. Stick with me here. Our guy is stronger than ever. Sneaking past the main roads, straight into the wild woods. The edge was totally empty, so he went deep. 5 miles in, everything shifted. Massive red pines and white birches completely hid the sky above. The snow piled up past his knees. No one ever dared to come out this far. Even veteran village hunters stayed away. Wild wolves and bears ruled this forest. But our hero had a secret radar. Every few hundred meters, he stopped and scanned the area. Within 100 meters, absolutely nothing could hide from him. He was hunting for a boar trail, since wild pigs always follow routines. They use the exact same paths constantly, crashing through the bushes until they carve out a permanent dirt lane. Hunters call it a pig run. Half an hour later, bingo. Near a thick hazel grove, the bushes looked like a massive truck had smashed through. Smashed branches lay everywhere, alongside fresh, incredibly deep, split hoof tracks in the snow. Tracks from this exact morning. The whole herd marched through here, heading deeper into the woods to eat. This was the perfect spot. He chose a super narrow gap between 2 giant trees. The absolute best path for the boars walking back home. He tied heavy steel cable snares to a giant pine root, using his vision to ensure it was frozen deep into the ground, completely solid like iron. An elephant could not pull this loose. He carefully opened the greased loop to about 16 inches across and hung it in the gap at the absolute perfect height, roughly 1.5 feet off the frozen ground. Exactly neck level for a boar. Propping the loop open with some dry grass stems to hold its round shape. He then covered the entire setup with a fresh layer of snow. Now watch closely. You would never spot this hidden trap in the snow. He set 3 intense snares in a perfect row, front, middle, and back. Once the lead boar hit the first one, the rest would completely panic and stumble right into the others. His hands were completely frozen stiff when he finished. He rubbed them together, blowing warm air into his fists, staring at his awesome handiwork with pure satisfaction. Now, it was a waiting game. He just had to hide out until dark. When those hungry pigs came waddling back home with completely full bellies, he stood up to find a cozy spot to hide, but then his eyes caught something totally unexpected. An old dead locust tree on a nearby hill. Its hollow trunk stood completely alone in the snow. His heart raced. That exact tree looked super familiar. A few days ago, while hunting rabbits nearby, his unique vision caught a quick flash of glowing metal buried deep underground. He had been too focused on the active hunt to investigate. But the location, the terrain, and that specific tree, everything perfectly matched up. Back then, he looked from the grove edge straight toward the deep woods. His amazing vision had super range, completely tricking him into thinking the shiny metal was much farther away. I know what you are thinking. The spot was actually right here at the mountain entrance. This was the very tree. He sprinted over. The bark cracked like fish scales, roots buried under thick snow. Nothing looked strange above ground, but to his magical eyes, it was an unopened treasure chest. Taking a huge breath, he focused all his mental energy, pushing his awesome vision straight down through the thick snow, frozen black dirt, and messy roots. Roughly 2.5 feet underground, wedged between the roots was a long rectangular object, an iron box, rusted almost entirely away, but he could clearly make out its awesome shape. A classic military ammunition or vintage equipment case. Peeking through gaps in the decaying metal, his vision caught several dark tube-shaped objects resting inside, plus a wooden stock crumbling into absolute sawdust. Guns. Genuine guns. His sheer excitement completely rushed straight to his head. Rusted and taken apart, sure, but those were genuine gun parts. A brilliant weapon that shoots fire. He had to dig them out now. Right then, he tried pulling the box into his special space through the dirt. Nothing happened. The inventory space could not grab items through solid earth. He needed direct physical contact. He pulled the sharp dagger straight from his boot and stabbed into the deeply frozen ground. Clang! It barely left a white scratch. This winter dirt was hard as cast iron. Digging with just a dagger would literally take until spring. He grabbed a leftover wooden stake from his inventory space, using it as a heavy hammer, pounding the dagger into the frozen dirt cracks like a chisel. Bang, bang, bang. Every intense hit rattled his hands numb. He stripped off his coat, working in just his shirt as steam rose from his body. 1 hour of brutal chiseling later, the pit reached knee deep. His hands were painfully scraped, but his eyes shined brighter than ever. Then, sharp metallic ring. The dagger tip finally struck something super hard. Not rock, pure metal. He tossed the stake down, dropping to his knees and excitedly clawing dirt with his bare hands. The intensely rusted iron box crumbled at his touch, revealing the prize inside. The old oilcloth wrapping had rotted away, but thick grease wonderfully protected the contents. Rusty, for sure, but the shapes were beautifully intact. A massive long barrel, a heavy bolt mechanism, scattered bullets coated in green corrosion, a disassembled rifle from the barrel sleeve, plus the classic clip-fed design. He easily recognized this epic find without even being an expert. So what do you and I make of this epic find? A vintage Hanyang Type 88. Someone buried it long ago and never returned. The stock was mud, but the legend continues today. Let's jump into this. The barrel was pure rust. The bolt was totally stuck. Normally, this is scrap metal, but to me, absolute treasure. Rust is no problem when I have infinite time inside my magical space. Missing a stock? Not an issue. I've got plenty of hardwood at home. If the main parts hold up and it fires, it's game over for every wild boar here. My hands literally shook as I swept the pieces into my inventory. I've never felt this incredibly powerful before. With this beauty, nowhere in these mountains is off limits. Then, a sharp crack echoed from the forest. A snapping branch. I flattened myself against an old tree, dagger ready, holding my breath. My eyes quickly scanned where the sound came from. No boars, no people, just a dry branch broken by the wind. I let out a sigh, but my frown returned. The wind shifted. Earlier today, it was just a gentle breeze. Now, it was howling through the tall trees like a wild beast. The sky shifted from pale gray to pitch black, heavy clouds pressing down. I definitely recognized this weather. Having spent a past life right here, I knew the signs. A white hairwind, an absolutely blinding blizzard. Now, pay close attention here. This storm won't stop for weeks. I wanted to check my boar traps, but getting greedy ruins everything. If that storm caught me here, even my magical space couldn't save me from turning into ice. But I wasn't leaving empty-handed. With the mountain about to be sealed by snow, staying warm meant pure survival. Our home stockpile looked fine, but blizzards eat fuel super fast. Run out at 40 below zero, and you become a total popsicle. I quickly grabbed my hatchet and sprinted straight toward the dead pine grove nearby. My upgraded sight easily spotted the driest trunks. Perfect wood that catches instantly and burns incredibly hot. Chop, chop. Trees came crashing down. I didn't even have to look, just waved my hand. Boom. They vanished into my space, neatly stacking in the corner. The wood pile grew ridiculously high until half the inventory was packed full. Perfect. This would easily last until spring. I tossed my coat on, grabbed some deeker firewood for show, and marched right through the rising wind toward home. The village was total chaos when I got back. The loudspeaker blared, Chief Lu shouting with serious urgency. Everyone, the weather report says a massive blizzard is here. Reinforce your homes. Stock up. Firewood. Protect the livestock. People scrambled everywhere in a total panic. Some climbed ladders, patching roofs, while others frantically pushed wheelbarrows to find wood. A few villagers even fought over leftover straw at the threshing ground. One guy's roof literally blew off. People were crying about having zero firewood left. What could they do? It was absolute chaos everywhere. I walked calmly past the crowd, keeping my face totally blank. Stepping inside my house, instant warmth hit me. Sue and Ya were cheerfully sewing. I know what you're thinking, but we were totally safe. I dropped the wood, locked our gate super tight, and smiled. I magically pulled a rabbit from my space and tossed it on the table. Tonight, amazing stew. Sue and Ya's eyes lit up completely. Outside, everyone was panicking, but behind our locked doors, we were cooking up a feast. They both swallowed hard, looking so hungry. I laughed and started happily sharpening my knife. Good food keeps the body nice and warm. Let the storm rage outside. The pot bubbled loudly, rich meat smells filling our cozy room. Outside, the vicious wind howled like crazy wolves. Fine snow pellets aggressively slammed into our window, hissing against the thick paper. The massive blizzard had officially arrived. Sitting on the warm bed, looking at my sister's cheerful smile, I felt a kind of safety and never known before. This was the true magic of being reborn. Having the ultimate foresight before a disaster hits is amazing. But honestly, I just couldn't fully relax yet. I stared at the boarded window, picturing the deep mountains 30 miles away. My awesome traps were still sitting out there. If this heavy snow kept falling and I didn't go check them, they would be completely buried. Any catch would be lost in the snow forever or stolen by wild wolves. My grip immediately tightened on my wooden chopsticks. Tomorrow morning, before the path closed completely, I had to make one more bold trip. The storm raged all night. By morning, snow piled half a foot high against our door. Visibility was terrible, maybe 50 meters. The entire world had turned blindingly white. Brother, are you actually going out? Sue saw me tie grass ropes around my legs and looked totally shocked. The chief said nobody leaves. Don't worry, just quickly checking the back hill. Won't go far at all. I totally lied. I secured my lucky dagger, double-checked my snacks, and gave my confident order. Lock everything up, and open for absolutely nobody. The door was half blocked by snow, so I just athletically vaulted over the yard wall. Way easier. Trust me, only a crazy, super strong guy with a magical inventory full of food would face this storm. So what do you think he finds next? Stick with me here. Anyone else would freeze within 2 miles. But I pushed through the snow. Yesterday's footprints were totally buried, but my vision easily cut right through the snow, reading hidden landmarks underneath. That crooked tree and big blue rock were still there. 5 miles usually takes 30 minutes, but today, 90. By the time I reached the pine forest, thick ice crusted my eyebrows. Every single breath puffed out as white fog. I ducked behind a tree, hiding from the harsh wind, and activated my vision. Piercing through the intense storm and dense woods, I finally spotted the old locust tree reference point. Then I quickly shifted my gaze left, scanning the board trail where I set my snares yesterday. My heart pounded fast. Something was definitely there. The hidden corridor was completely torn apart, bushes flattened wildly, and right in the very middle, directly where my main snare sat, a dark shape lay half buried in snow. Definitely not a rock. That was food. Living food. I completely forgot my exhaustion and excitedly charged right through the snow. Snow poured into my boots, but I did not care at all. Every ounce of energy inside me was burning. As I approached, the dark shape heard me and lurched. Whoa, a wild boar. Not the absolute biggest, maybe 100 pounds. A yearling with yellow-brown fur, but fiercely mean. The steel cable was buried incredibly deep into its neck, cutting through thick hide and bristles into a harsh groove. It must have hit the snare late last night and thrashed around for hours. The surrounding snow was completely churned up into a giant crater. Bushes were broken. Now watch closely. The second it saw me, pure rage took over and it launched straight at me. Hooves furiously dug into the ground. The cable snapped taut like a guitar string. Yanked backward mid-charge, the pig flipped, hitting the snow incredibly hard. It scrambled back up, trying again. That is wild boar stubbornness. Stubborn until the bitter end. I stopped 5 meters away. Absolutely zero fear. Just the pure joy of a hunter eyeing his grand harvest. 100 pounds. with the whole village running low on food and blizzards sealing doors. This was literally a massive mountain of gold delivered right to my feet. Stop fighting already. I drew my dagger, the blade catching that gray snowlight. If this were a 300-pound boar king or a massive herd, I would gladly climb a tree. But one exhausted yearling with a totally tangled neck? If I could not handle this, I did not deserve a second chance. I circled sideways, steering clear of those sharp tusks. The strong cable held its neck tight, stopping any turns. It snorted, glaring at me with bright red eyes, but I could see right through its body. The wire crushed its windpipe heavily. Every single struggle was choking it faster. This pig was running purely on angry fury and nothing else. Close enough. I leaped, boots landing firmly on its spine. 140 pounds of me pinned the exhausted animal completely flat into the snow. It thrashed wildly beneath me, bristles stabbing like needles, hooves kicking snow everywhere. I quickly grabbed its ear with my left hand and wrenched its head back, forcing the neck up. The throat stretched wide open. Through my special vision, the main artery pulsed big and red just under the skin. Zero hesitation here. The dagger punched right down to the hilt. I twisted my wrist, ripping sideways. One clean cut, artery completely severed. The loud screaming stopped instantly. Hot liquid erupted, painting the white snow red in a spreading circle. It splashed right across my face and hands, heavy and metallic. The pig shuddered, then finally went soft. The bright red slowly faded from its eyes. I bravely held it down until every twitch stopped. Done. I stood up, wiped my messy face, proudly looking at the prize. Over 100 pounds. Carrying this all back would destroy me, and that distinct scent would definitely bring hungry wolves. But I had my special cheat ability. The storm was so incredibly thick. Visibility was basically zero. Nobody else was around. You know what I'm thinking, right? I pressed my palm down. Gone. The entire massive catch vanished, leaving just a red pool on churned snow. Inside my secret space, the boar floated quietly in the corner, keeping company with my roe deer. I quickly covered the red with kicked up snow, eyed the super valuable steel cable, and cleaned up the scene. The crazy adrenaline was fading, and freezing cold started creeping right back into my bones. Time to go, or the heavy snow would bury me too. I tightened my collar, found my bearings, and bravely pushed homeward. Empty-handed on the outside, but inside, I was absolutely overflowing with joy. With this big catch, plus the deer I already grabbed, we did not just have enough food to survive. We actually had plenty to last totally through New Year, past the holiday, and well into the spring. And this beast was way more than just food. The hide, the bones, the bladder, everything was super useful. Heading back, I could barely keep my tired eyes open against the driving snow, but my eager mind was already planning the next project. Being stuck safely inside during the terrible blizzard was actually the perfect time. I needed to eagerly strip every rusted gun part, thoroughly clean them, and see what I had. Daggers worked fine for a 100-pound yearling on a rope, but facing a herd of 300-pounders, a knife will not cut it. Trust me, you will want to see what happens next. Stick with me, we're diving into a wild survival story. Once I fixed that rifle, the whole mountain was mine. I headed home. Every single house, locked tight. Zero people outside. I hopped right over my courtyard wall. A tiny light peeked from our window. "It's your brother," called out. "Open up, I'm back." She could totally hear how tired I was, but also something else. Pure excitement. The door flew open. I stumbled inside, covered in frost. "Brother, there are red marks on you." Sweatsaway saw the stains instantly, her face going totally pale. "Are you hurt?" "Nope, I'm fine. It's from a wild pig." I locked up tight, bolted it shut. Then, right in front of my sisters, I just waved my hand. Boom! Over 100 pounds of wild boar magically appeared, hitting the dirt floor so hard the whole room shook. Absolute silence for a second. Then, Yaya's excited shriek split the air. "Huge pig! Meat! Meat!" Suor covered her mouth, happy tears streaming right down her cheeks. An entire pig. This winter, we had absolutely nothing to fear. The massive blizzard raged for 3 whole days. Our door stayed completely shut the entire time, but inside, we were living like absolute royalty compared to the village. We burned premium red pine from the deep mountains, super hot and incredibly long-lasting. Our 3 tiny rooms were perfectly, toasty warm. Brother, this smells amazing, Yaya cheered, her cute little nose twitching right over a massive iron pot full of steaming, delicious pork bones. I had already sliced most of the meat and stashed it safely inside my spatial inventory, but those bones still had tons of rich scraps and tendons left on them. Thanks to our new salt, the rich broth turned creamy and thick, topped with a beautiful golden layer. I scooped out some crunchy pieces just for Yaya. Eat up and grow tall. Titsui sat there in her new blue jacket, happily sipping warm broth mixed with dried greens. Her cheeks were bright pink, half from the steam, half from finally getting real, solid nutrition. Watch closely, because if anyone outside saw us, they'd completely lose their minds. Out there, the entire village was going hungry. That wasn't just a random guess. It was harsh reality. Most families completely ran out of supplies way before the storm hit. They were betting on emergency grain from the commune, or just desperately hunting for firewood and wild plants outside. But 3 days of endless snow blocked every single door. Nobody could leave. Right next door, Uncle Chanji's place had gone completely silent. His chimney barely smoked, probably completely out of wood. The educated youth camp was undeniably the worst. Those fancy city kids sent to the countryside had 0 real farming skills. Bad work points literally meant they got terrible grain rations. They foolishly traded their food for stuff like soap. Now, they had absolutely 0 left. Peeking through a frosty window crack, I spotted some of those guys shivering under the giant elm tree in town, desperately hacking off its bark with heavy axes. They were peeling the rough outside just to reach the soft white layer underneath, grind it down, boil it with random weeds, and make a paste. Total desperation. Food. It wreaks havoc on your stomach for days, but it definitely beats fading away completely. I know what you're thinking. Did I feel bad for them? Nope. Watching those snobby kids fight a tree for survival gave me 0 pity. This was just the start. When true hunger makes people lose their minds, tree bark is only step 1. Soon enough, they stop looking at trees and start looking at each other. I just turned away, tossed the bones into my inventory, and grabbed some fresh meat. Dumplings tonight. Sweatsuer almost dropped her bowl. Brother, do we actually have flour? We have millet. I pulled out the very last of our bag. Tasty millet dough for the wrapper, rich pork for the filling. Maybe not fancy wheat flour, but right now, this was a total emperor's feast. I completely refused to live small. If the universe gifted me a second chance and these crazy powers, I'm going to make it count. Whatever chaos happens outside my walls, as long as it doesn't bother us, it's totally not my problem. The dumplings just hit the boiling water when someone knocked. Soft, careful, and incredibly rhythmic. Everyone totally froze, swayed. Sue and Yaya stared at the door. Just eat, I said, putting down my bowl. I smoothly slipped my dagger into my boot, threw on my heavy coat, and walked over without opening up. Is Comrade Wang Yi home? Asked a woman's shaky voice. Pretty but super shaky, practically crying. From the youth camp, I instantly recognized it. Swan, the city girl. Super pretty, always strutting around with her nose high, treating local farm guys like absolute dirt beneath her shoes. What exactly do you want? My tone was pure ice. It's Swan from the camp. We are totally out of food. Her voice shrank. Everyone is about to collapse from pure hunger. I noticed your chimney was still smoking. Could you please just lend us something to eat? Once the snow stops and they distribute grain, we will seriously pay you back double. Lending grain during a major famine. That is literally risking your own life. I almost laughed out loud. Double? When would they actually give grain? Could be months. Plus, with their garbage work points, how could they even pay me back? But I didn't immediately reject her. These kids were placed here by the higher-ups. If a few of them completely waste away right at my door, that creates a massive headache for me. Plus, I couldn't look totally heartless. So what do we make of this? Wait, I said, grabbing 3 basic corn buns directly from my hidden space. Stick with me. Here, I kept these strictly for emergencies. They were mostly just wild greens and rough rice husks. So rough. They absolutely scraped your throat going down. But right now, total survival. Food. I cracked that door open, just wide enough to slip my hand through. 3 youth camp girls stood outside. Swan was in front, face completely pale as purple, shaking inside her heavy army coat. Her eyes totally lit up seeing my hand, but instantly dimmed when she saw what I was actually holding. 3 frozen, rock-hard black buns. Take them, I said through the crack. Zero warmth in my voice. This is all I have. We are almost out, too. Scraped these straight from the bottom of the barrel. She stood there completely stunned. The city princess, who had never been treated this rough before. Wang Yi, could you at least give us some hot water? Another girl begged. No, take it, or leave it. I started shutting the door. We will take them. Swan snatched the buns with freezing fingers. Hard as rocks, but it was still food. Thank you, she whispered. Head down, tears building up. From the cold or from pure shame, could not tell. Do not come back. I shut the door and locked it tight. Outside, I heard them shuffling away through the deep snow, holding each other up. Zero guilt. In a world ruled by pure survival, kindness has a heavy price. Those 3 buns were already more than generous. If I let them inside and they saw the hot pork dumplings on the table, all that fire would stacked high. The fallout would be way worse than wild wolves breaking into our village. Are they gone? Sui asked me quietly. Gone. I sat right back down, grabbed a steaming hot dumpling, and took a huge bite. From now on, anyone asking for food gets absolutely nothing. Understand? Understood? Now watch closely. Giving away even 3 buns in a starving village was a massive signal. Wang Yi has food. And the guy who caught that signal was exactly who I expected. Uncle Shangwei. His family had completely run dry. His broken teeth were still super swollen. His face literally half caved from hunger. Whatever food they had, he and his 2 lazy sons devoured it in 2 days. The commune had absolutely nothing left. He had been stalking my house from his window this entire time. That little punk. He is hiding food. Pure venom shining in his eyes. He absolutely hated me for breaking his teeth, getting Erlu sent to the labor camp, and now, having food while his own family starved. But he did not dare come alone. The memory of my flying knife and Earl's awful fate kept him frozen. So he tried a different tactic. Not force, pure manipulation. He dragged his family out, going door to door, gathering up the most pitiful people in the entire village. Widow Zhao, old man Li on welfare. He grabbed all the hungriest, weakest, and most sympathetic faces he could find. Sisters, uncles, we cannot just sit here and waste away, he told them, his voice dripping with totally fake concern. I heard Wang Yi has food. He gave buns to those youth camp girls. He is one of our own. If we all ask nicely, he cannot just watch his own village elders starve, right? Total moral blackmail. That was his ultimate weapon here. He was not going himself. He was pushing the village's most helpless people straight to the front lines. You and I both know the play here. Nobody punishes a crowd. He bet I would never pull a knife on starving grandmothers and orphans. By the time they reached my gate, over a dozen people, old, young, thin as sticks, standing in the blowing snow, looking ready to collapse any given second. Shangui hid safely in the back. He nudged his wife, Jiang Dao, and she instantly started wailing at the very top of her lungs. Wang Yi, dear nephew, have mercy on your auntie. We are all going to fade away. Please just share something with us. Her screeching brought the whole neighborhood straight to their windows. Meanwhile, I was just cleaning up dishes inside. I peeked through the door, a huge ring of people crowding my gate. Chanji's family lurking right behind them. Up front, every widow, orphan, and old-timer in the village, literally used as human shields. Clever bastard. My eyes went ice cold. A real flash of fierce intent. This was a brilliant siege, using pity as a literal battering ram. Open the door and give food today? Tomorrow, the entire village shows up. They would eat through absolutely everything I had. And once people knew my secret stash, the crazy trouble would never, ever end. But flat out refusing, with those half-frozen old folks and little kids outside. If things got super ugly and the crowd forced their way inside, I put down my bowl, pulled my dagger, weighed it in my hand, then put it away. I could not use a blade on victims being used as pawns. I had to use my brain, something sharper. I needed to expose the puppet master hiding in back. So I hid the leftover dumplings, went to the back and scraped together a massive basin of old rice husk powder. The exact stuff people only feed to pigs. Eat this, and your throat feels exactly like rough sandpaper. Plus, you will not be able to use the toilet for days. I quickly mixed that rough husk powder with cold water, making a thick gray paste. Then, I picked up the basin and marched right to the front door. You want food? I threw the door wide open. Come inside and eat. Eat. I held out the giant basin of gray husk paste, pushing it right toward them. You said you are starving. You said you came to borrow food. This is what we are eating today. Whoever is hungry, dig in. Trust me, you, and I felt that the entire crowd went dead silent. Let us dive into this. Jiang De Zhao stopped wailing, mouth hanging completely open, while Uncle Shanggui's face twitched. The guy was shaking with pure anger. For 3 whole days, he caught the amazing scent of meat from my house. He refused to believe this leftover slop was all I had. You little brat. He shoved forward, spitting everywhere. You think we are fools? I clearly smelled meat from your house. You hid the good stuff and gave us this garbage. That totally lit the fuse. The hungry villagers behind him, with their eyes wild from starving, heard the word meat, and their fading spark of hope flared right back up. He has meat, and he will not share. Let us rush him. No way. His house is completely empty. Uncle's oldest son, Wang Dio, who was huge and clueless, let out a loud yell and charged straight at my door. Move. I am searching this place. His dirty hand was inches from my collar. I never dodged, just calmly set the basin down in the snow. My right hand swiftly swung behind me to the corner just inside the door. The axe. I brought it around in one smooth, epic arc, straight toward his hand. If it had connected, that hand was gone forever. DBO's spirit practically jumped right out of his terrified body. He yanked his arm back so hard that he slipped and crashed right onto his backside in the snow. Thunk. Now watch this. The axe buried itself 3 inches deep into the wood frame. The whole thing shuddered. I held that awesome pose, head slowly rising up. My eyes showed absolutely nothing. As dark and wonderfully mysterious as a wild wolf den in the deep mountains. Who else wants to search? Debio sat in the snow, a stain spreading across his pants, screaming out loud, help, he is trying to destroy me. Uncle Shangwei swallowed so loud I heard it. This kid would actually finish someone. Uncle. I pulled the axe free, chips scattering everywhere. I stepped over the threshold, axe in hand, and confidently scanned the quiet crowd. Every single person my eyes touched stumbled backward. All their brave talk about charging completely vanished, like breath in the freezing cold. I was just passing by. One old farmer stammered, backing away. I need nothing, I am leaving. One broke away, and the rest happily followed. The whole crowd scattered like startled birds. No one wanted to perish for a meal. Wang Yi, just wait. This is sabotaging unity. I'm reporting you to the commune. Uncle yelled as he retreated. Just go, I said, pointing the axe toward the village entrance. Go right now, they close early. His angry face turned dark red. He stomped his foot, dragged his messy son off the ground, and ran. The doorstep was totally empty. Everything was quiet again. I watched them disappear, then went back inside and happily slammed the door. The lock clicked shut. Sweetse was white as paper, bravely gripping scissors in both her hands. Brother, it is over. I tossed my axe onto the chopping block. The fierce look completely melted off my face, and I simply smiled. People like that only understand one language. Try being nice, and they will climb all over your head. Show them an axe, and suddenly they remember their manners. Come on, let us finish those tasty dumplings. That night, the snow finally stopped. 3 whole days of blizzard were done. The clouds tore apart, and a bright moon came through, lighting the thick snow until it looked like daytime. But it was an eerie kind of bright and cold, the intense kind of cold that literally cracks stones. The village was silent as a ghost town. Even the dogs were totally hiding. I could not sleep, lying on the bed, just turning the dagger in my hands. You and I know peace never lasts. My hunter instinct screamed something wild was coming. The famine starved more than people. The wild animals in the mountains were starving. Worse, 3 days of blizzard had completely locked every small creature underground. The fierce predators at the top of the food chain had nothing left to eat. When the mountains go empty, their noses turn toward the village, drawn to the smell of humans and livestock. A woo, a long, wailing howl echoed from the wasteland near the village entrance. It stretched across the quiet sky, making my scalp crawl. No dog, a wolf. I sat up like a cat, completely silent and incredibly fast. Sweatsay stirred, but never woke. I warmly tucked the blanket around her and quickly padded barefoot to the window. Then from the east end of the village came frantic barking. Old Man Lee's big yellow dog. That dog was the meanest in the village, but now its bark was incredibly shrill with terror. The barking peaked into one absolutely horrible, short scream. Then came sounds of dragging. I quickly opened my enhanced vision. At the edge of my range, 2 blurry green dots were moving incredibly fast across the snow near the east end. Glowing wolf eyes. Wolves were inside the village. More than one. I firmly gripped my dagger, but never moved. The wolves were not at my door, and I was not about to risk my life for someone else's dog. In this world, you sweep the snow from your own step. That is how you stay alive. But those giant wolves were not satisfied with one scrawny dog. That scent makes predators bolder. They followed the wind toward a stronger smell. The commune livestock shed behind the village headquarters. That special shed held the village's most precious possessions. 1 old yellow ox and 2 big donkeys. Trust me on this. Without them, there is no spring plowing, meaning the entire village would starve next year too. A deep, desperate bellow erupted from the ox, the terrifying crack of wooden fencing breaking, donkeys shrieking. Stick with me, we are diving into a wild night. Shadows chomping on the livestock, lights flickering everywhere. Wolves, wake up! Down by the animal pens. The old watchman's frantic shouts and loud gong rattled the entire village. Everyone jumped out of bed. I stood by my window, watching torches and flashlight beams frantically dancing near the main hall. This was no small issue. If those animals were lost, the field simply could not be worked. If the field sat empty, everyone would starve. This meant survival for every single person in our village. Brothers woke up, trembling, gripping their blankets. What is happening? Wolves are inside. Stay put. Lock the door. I'm going to check. Do not leave. They are wolves. Relax. I pulled my hatchet off the wall and smiled brightly. Those beasts are not here to brawl. They brought us dinner. I was just wondering how to score extra food without looking too suspicious. And look, dinner is walking right toward me. By the time I reached the commune yard, the entire scene was absolute chaos. Dozens of villagers formed a shaky half-circle, their torches throwing harsh red light across the ruined snow. People held farming hoes, shovels, and sticks, but everyone was completely trembling. Not a single person dared step forward. The animal fence was totally wrecked. Total chaos everywhere. 2 massive gray wolves were fiercely locked onto our old ox. One clamped its powerful jaws on a back leg. The second beast hung from the neck, teeth buried deep. The ox bellowed loudly, wildly, thrashing its head, while hooves gouged deep trenches in the snowy ground. But it was far too old and weak from winter starvation. It could not shake them loose. Now watch this closely. Things get intense. The donkeys collapsed nearby, totally paralyzed by terror. Strike them. Somebody attack. Chief Lu stomped around, waving his old pipe frantically. That is our ox. That is our livelihood, Chief. We cannot face those terrifying eyes. Where is Zhao Dahu? The captain has a weapon. The bolt is frozen. It will not pull back. Zhao dripped nervous sweat, fiercely wrestling the old rifle. The freezing cold solidified the gun oil. The weapon was completely useless. Now, Chief Lu grabbed a heavy shovel and tried charging in alone. I will fight this beast myself. Men hauled him backward. Chief, that is pure madness. Then things got worse. The male wolf released the ox's neck and whipped around to face the terrified crowd. Stained fangs were bared completely. A low, terrifying growl echoed from deep within its throat. Those eyes looked cunning and savage. It read the frightened crowd perfectly. These humans were completely terrified. One lunge and they would scatter. It is watching us. Run. The line shattered. Men dropped their tools and immediately bolted. The circle collapsed. Fear spread like wildfire. That primal terror of prey facing a predator ripped through every single starving, weak farmer in that yard. You saw this coming, right? The beast's eyes flashed with contempt. Its legs coiled tightly to spring. The old ox was no longer its target. It targeted the old man yelling the absolute loudest. Chief Lu. He helplessly watched that gray shape launch straight into the freezing air. His mind went blank. He shut his eyes tightly. The heavy impact never arrived. A sharp whistle cut the air. Crack. The beast's head snapped violently sideways in midair. Its body lost direction, wildly slamming into the snow and tumbling multiple times before finally stopping. Jammed into its left eye socket was a solid chunk of frozen earth, driven so incredibly deep that half its face was practically ruined. It screamed an agonizing howl, thrashing on the ground, totally blinded and completely crazed by intense pain. Everyone completely froze. Then every head turned. The crowd split apart on its own, opening a path. A young man wearing a torn cotton coat casually strolled through, hatchet secured in his belt, playfully tossing another heavy chunk of frozen dirt and catching it effortlessly. His face revealed absolutely nothing. His stare was far colder than the beast's. Everybody move aside. You are completely blocking my meal. The male wolf was still rolling on the ground, howling loudly. That frozen dirt completely shattered its eye socket. Half its face was crushed inward, totally knocking the beast out of commission. The female wolf dropped the ox's neck. She sensed the real threat, not the torches, not the panicked crowd. Something sharper. I walked forward, totally steady, snow crunching beneath my heavy boots. I ignored the defeated male entirely, my gaze tightly locked onto the female. The villagers pulled back like a tide. Nobody dared to breathe loudly. Chief Lu collapsed into the snow, pipe dropped, staring at me like he had never actually seen me before in his entire life. This was not the quiet kid who never spoke up. This was a drawn blade. I passed the stunned militia captain. Zhao Dao, if the bolt is frozen, thaw it out. Standing there holding a stick. Who is that supposed to scare? His face immediately went bright red. He wanted to argue, but his nervous throat was dry. He was the man in charge of village defense. But when the wolf charged, his legs turned to absolute jelly. He had not even tried using his bayonet. I did not wait around for an answer. I walked to the center of the yard, 5 meters from the female wolf. She crouched low, growling deep in her throat. She did not run away. You and I know this. A starving predator only sees a bigger meal. Her legs coiled, claws digging deep into the completely frozen ground. She was about to leap. I stopped. My right hand reached behind and smoothly drew the hatchet. Pitch black blade, perfectly bright edge. Stick with me, you're about to witness an epic showdown. My hidden blade was ready for defense. A shorter blade for the finishing strike. These wolves possess iron heads and spines, yet their tummies are completely soft, moving way faster than anybody. I needed my little hatchet for defense and the dagger to finally stop her. Bring it on. I lifted my chin high, total provocation. She launched forward instantly, hind legs exploding off the ground, snow flying everywhere, a gray blur. Harsh wind hit my face, fangs aiming for my neck. The watching crowd completely gasped, some totally covering their eyes. Everyone thought I was completely finished. The wolf was flying so incredibly fast. But my entire world shifted. Supervision activated. Time stretched. Wind froze. Now watch closely. The snow hung perfectly still, and she became completely transparent. I saw every muscle fiber twisted tight like steel cables. Her heart was hammering, pure energy rushing through her veins. I saw exactly how deeply every single fang was rooted in her jaw. I tracked her whole trajectory, claws reaching for my shoulders, jaws targeting my neck. A perfectly fierce, spectacular pounce. If I stepped backward, she would land and completely wreck my stance. Blocking would just easily knock me down. Absolutely no retreating allowed. I needed a winning strike, and her true weaknesses were the belly or eyes. But during a wild head-on charge, the belly was too hard to reach, and eyes are way too small on flying animals. Unless my awesome vision looked straight through her open jaws, past those fangs, deep inside. Soft tissue leading perfectly toward her brainstem and spine. Just one chance, a tiny fraction of a second. I moved bravely, skipping the hatchet swing entirely. She would easily deflect it. Instead, I did something absolutely nobody ever expected. I dropped back, sliding across the snow right under her. Trust me, we won't ever forget this epic counterattack.